we are not used to that digitalized kind of, that's why you all may be aware there was so much of hassles, like there are Tran 1, issues which were there. Then many writs approached in the High Court. And in fact, recently on the Bombay High Court, what they did is they just took all the Tran 1 matters, they listed all together, and they said, Chalo, let us hear what is your point. And they didn't even ask, they said, okay, you had filed and there was some technical problem, we are sending you back. Please go back. But again, with the department, the problem was whether they have the mechanism now, because the portal is, I mean, whether it would be possible practically for the department. Okay, maybe it's really, as an assessee, I'm saying, I was entitled for that credit. So mujhe to milna chahiye. So all these things, So now coming back to the topic of valuation, as we are aware, and I mentioned at the beginning, GST has subsumed all the taxes. So GST has brought a new concept of supply. That is why when we use, or when we are in GST and we take that, on what value should I pay? The first thing is whether it's a supply. Section 7. Then we go to the valuation rules. First is Section 15. And one unique thing, there is a levying section under CGST, whether it is Section 9 or IGST Section 5. They have mentioned the section. It says that they will levy a tax of so and so on a value as it will be determined under Section 15. So it is, like putting you in that direction, in that route. You can't go beyond that. It has to be under Section 15. And then, of course, as we had normally in service tax or excise, also valuation rules. So if you don't have Section 15, prices, sole consideration, seller and buyer are unrelated, and all those three conditions, if they are not satisfied, you go under Section 15. If they're not satisfied, you go to valuation rules. So this is what is the entire concept. And valuation rules also, as you all are aware in excise, as far as the concept of revenue neutrality was there, it was given effect by judgments. There was no specific provision in the act which said that if I am paying something and the recipient is entitled to credit, maybe I may not have an intention that purposely I am paying less tax, because I know that only my other unit is going to get a credit. But this was by way of legal. I mean, there were judgments to that effect, but there was no specific provision. Presumably, my way of looking at it, Rule 28 second proviso in the valuation rules has been given statutory effect. Statutorily now, I mean, because it says that if recipient is entitled to full ITC, eligible for full ITC, whatever invoice you declare the value, that will be the open market value. So I think that concept has been given a legal shape or a legal sanctity. Although I know there are various issues, because, the question, I just mutually agree and I keep only 100. Actually, cost to bahut tha, but I kept only 100. But my point is, am I going out of the law? No. If the second proviso is providing and I'm doing that, whether I'm wrong in doing that. Then other issues, we never even thought of. I'm sitting in the head office, doing various services for my company. I go for an interview in a company and they say, okay, you're given the job. They give me an appointment letter. They say XYZ Limited. I go and tell I'm employed by XYZ Limited. But I'm sitting in the head office. I'm doing certain activities. That certain activities which I'm doing are going to benefit the entire company. Say, for example, I'm doing something for sales, for promotion of my sales. I'm sitting in head office with my team. I say, okay, chalo, your audit here, I'm doing. But the question is, when I'm doing something in the head office and it's benefiting all the employees who are all in the branches in different states, they started saying it's a supply. So whether it should be a supply. When we said, go to Schedule 2, where an employee-employee relationship is there, Schedule 3, wherein it says it is neither a service, neither a goods. Then they came with a unique idea, no, employee-employer, you are only employed by that head office, not at other branches. Okay, what you're doing, it may be benefiting them, but they are separately registered over there. Because everywhere in GST, if you see all the provisions, it starts every registered person, any person, every registered person. So registered person, when I'm sitting in head office, is registered person, head office separately, not that branch, not that particular unit. So that was one more raising issues. We have ARs on that, still not quite settled. But as of now, the ARs, although there is one more plea to that AR, whether it will apply to me or no. I'm not, it is only binding on the person who has applied and the jurisdictional officer, whether it will apply to me, whether it is binding on me. That is another, this thing which has not been. And to be very honest, since GSTAT, that is the tribunal in GST, still is not being formed. That is why, as of now, whatever rulings, although 2017 and now we are in 2022, There is no specific, you can say a specific judgment. Yes, this is the issue and this is a judgment. Because we have rulings which are not applicable to all, except for the applicant. So there is no specific judgment which we can say on the issue. That is one thing. And the burning issue, before we come to our case studies, which we all are aware about the Gujarat High Court judgment as far as the construction industry is concerned. To some, it is really a relief, because especially from those amendments from 1/4/2019 in that notification, there was so much of confusion. Ki kaun sa value lena hai, kaun sa nahi. Like there was a concept wherein land is never subject to tax. That's why sale of land, specifically Schedule 3, it has been specified that GST will not be there on that. It's neither a supplier. But then when transfer of development rights came, is it not related to land? My land is there. I'm giving somebody transfer of development. Okay, I'm transferring and I'm allowing him to construct. Is it not something related to land? Whether they would have created an entry and levied tax wherein promoter is made to pay as a recipient, but still that is there. So again, that is the issue. Is it going contra? That is one more issue. And then again, that 1/3, which Gujarat High Court has now come down heavily, saying that 1/3, that it's arbitrary, because maybe less ho sakta hai, kam ho sakta hai, and you are not given any this much this much plot of land ko itna hai. Yeah, if it's you have larger value, maybe in some cases the value of land may be more, but you're getting only 1/3. So there it will be beneficial. So all these kind of issues which will be there. I think now we'll go with our case studies so that. So I think the case study 1, this aspect, before coming to case study, we are aware that even in central excise, this concept was there, wherein molds and components, if they are given, like I'm a manufacturer of motor vehicles, I'm getting components manufactured from somebody. And for getting that, I'm sending this, like in this case, we have drawings and tools which are being sent to him. Question is whether, and of course, it is free of cost, I'm not recovering anything. So whether that cost has to be included or not. Even in central excise, or for that matter in GST also now, specifically through the circular which we have just mentioned there, they have said that one unique thing they have brought over there, they are saying that if there is a contractual obligation, like when I'm agreeing that, okay, I'm selling to you, is there a contractual obligation that I'm going to supply certain things, say molds, say I have the drawings, say, which you have to use and manufacture the components which you're going to sell to me. So if there is a legal obligation, if there is a contractual obligation, then it has to be included. You can just bring that circular with that. Just below. Yeah, so here you can see, first question. Whether molds and dies owned by original equipment. This much is okay, whether everybody can. Yeah. Whether molds and dies owned by original equipment manufacturers that are sent free of cost to a component manufacturer is leviable to tax, and whether OEMs are required to reverse. Molds and dies owned by original equipment manufacturers which are provided to component manufacturer on FOC basis does not constitute a supply, as there is no consideration, because I'm not recovering anything for that. So there is no supply. Further, since the molds and dies are provided on FOC as free of cost basis by OEM to component manufacturer in the course or furtherance of his business, there is no requirement of reversal of ITC. Fair enough. It is further clarified that while calculating the value made by so and so, value provided to the component on FOC basis shall not be added to the value. So normally, since it's a not supply, there is no consideration, reversal of ITC zarurat nahi hai, add karne ki zarurat nahi. But 1.3, if you can just see, however, if the contract between OEM and component manufacturer was for supply, contract between OEM and component manufacturer was for supply of components made by using the molds or dies belonging to the component manufacturer, but the same have been supplied by the OEM to component manufacturer on free of cost basis, then the amortized cost of such molds shall be added to the value of components. In such cases, obviously, OEM will be required to reverse the credit availed on such molds, as the same will not be considered to be provided by OEM to the component manufacturer in course or furtherance of the former's business. I think we can. And following this, even there is a advance ruling also, wherein they have followed this. And they have come, we have mentioned that NASH 2019, that GST AAAR also has come out with this, all taking cognizance of the circular. Shall we move to the next?
Actually, ma'am, our format is participants will discuss the issue.
Okay. Okay.
We will discuss the issue and then you will give
your
input.
Fine. Okay. So I gave the answer already.
Yeah, no problem. So
okay, let us move.
So any discussion on this? Any participants want to? So shall we move to second?
There is no, I mean, this is not contractually. I may give certain stuff for him to do. For example, I may give him the drawings and designs how this needs to be built up. Does that mean that the value needs to be added? This some notional value needs to be added to it?
Amortized, maybe some kind of cost may be arrived at mutually agreed. If at all you're using that. Maybe not maybe strictly with respect to drawings, maybe to tools or something, because that usage of like molds, although the word I think we have used is drawings and tools, we can more correlate it to tools, maybe not to drawings, because I don't know how the cost may be arrived at.
See, in excise, there was a different,
Yes.
I mean, it was a different level where the tax was on manufacturers.
Correct.
And there was obviously, if you are not a manufacturer, you are not liable to any excise. Which is why they had all the limitation where molds value needs to be added.
Yes.
Whereas when we go in GST, it's goods and services
Supply.
both are taxed. So why do we want to include something emotionally, amortize value emotionally, add the amortized value emotionally in GST? When conceptually, whatever that I'm charging, he's supplying whatever. You may not call it to be a manufacturer or component. You may be supplying something, and you are charging GST on it. Why notionally make something? Because what it results in, me, I will not charge any money to him. So I need to undertake the compliance of raising an invoice for something which is not a supply at all for me. So far as I am concerned, I am not selling those goods. There is no supply at all for me. And for him also to take credit of it, he'll have to without making any payment, he'll have to take this total amount where actual reality there is no transaction happening. And if we take this argument, what the circular says, if we extend it, tomorrow, for example, if a carpenter comes to my house, I allow him to use my electricity, or I get wood for for him to make my chairs and tables. Would that value needs to be added for him to discharge GST? I mean, it can be extended to further vague logic or further absurd logic is if I get my car painted, would the value of car be added to the value of the painting because I've given my car for free painted?
No, I think that giving car for painting or all that will be on a different basis, because here I think when I'm giving these tools, or I think it is in furtherance and course of my business. If you're giving your car for painting, or if I'm calling a carpenter at my home or whatever, office to do furniture, whatever, I feel it should not be in the course or furtherance of business. Because if you see in that circular, initially they have mentioned that there is no supply, and it is since it's free of cost, consideration nahi hai, there is no supply, and he did not reverse the ITC. But they have carved out a situation that if it's a contractual obligation, only then maybe it has to be included. So I think that point of yours gets answered in the first 2 points, wherein they are saying that supply hai hi nahi, consideration nahi hai. But this,
if in the contract it is mentioned that I'll give you the designs or the way I want it, I have to I have to obviously give my specifications. Those drawings and designs could be the way I want this thing to be prepared.
yes.
So that notionally adding that value, it doesn't.
Because maybe the benefit what I'm getting, the components which I'm getting from him, the my tools given to him are adding to some value of the components which I'm getting from him. Maybe that may be the concept, although there is no consideration, because as you rightly said, if there is a supply and there is no consideration, we only go to schedule 1, wherein they have carved out situations that even if there is no consideration, you need to include it. I mean, you need to consider it as a supply, and it has to be, it's a supply, but there is no specific, as far as this is concerned, in schedule 1, it is not there. I think that is what they have given. But according to me, since it's adding to the value of the components which they will be giving to me, suppose if I would have not provided, for a moment, I'm not providing anything. He would have definitely got it from someone, means maybe either he himself must have designed it or he must have got it from somebody. So uska cost, something usko lagta hi tha na. So maybe that's why they are trying to give.
Excise concept of this thing. Excise certainly because I am the manufacturer, he is not the manufacturer. Someone who is receiving, he is not the manufacturer, he may not be a manufacturer. So in excise, these values, because I'm arriving at the value of my of the goods that I'm clearing from the factory.
Then here also, when I'm supplying this I means
sorry, but there was a provision in excise which said that value needs to be added.
That was rule 6 of valuation.
There is a provision that needs to be added. Unless you consider this to be an additional consideration. Price is not the sole consideration. This is an additional consideration that I am giving you for.
Why you feel it is not an additional consideration? Going by your point only.
Yeah.
As we told, section 15 for value. Price should be the sole.
Provision which asks me which
no. Even section 15 inclusions also. as far as rule, as you compare to rule 6 of valuation rules under excise, it does not specify that these things have to be included. But by giving this, is it not a case of price not being the sole, what price is being charged?
Exactly, therefore price was not the sole consideration. Here it is again the same example of if I am giving some facility to someone for doing some activity, will you include notionally all those price in here? For example, the reason why I am saying price is not the sole consideration is, what am I doing? I need certain goods and I am allowing him certain, I am giving the tools. The tools I am not supplying, my intention is not to supply the tools to him. My intention is the tools should be used for him to render service. What is his activity? His activity is supply of the components. Okay. Now, for supply of the component, what is he charging me? He is charging me X rupees for the supply of component. Otherwise, what you are saying is there is a reciprocal. For his valuation also, you would have to add his value of it. So it's a circuitous transaction where his actual supply, if you go to see, is only whatever his his manufacturing, maybe a job work perspective or the contract manufacturing, whatever you may call it. What he's actually receiving is only this. Just adding these two only creates a lot of confusion, a lot of in accounting perspective also a lot of challenges for companies to record something which is actually not a transaction in their books of accounts.
In fact,
if I may just add back to his point, sir, let us take a live example. Right now, there are car manufacturers who may have got their smart keys manufactured from a component manufacturer, and there's a shortage of the semiconductors. Now, the car manufacturer may have the semiconductors in bulk with him. The component manufacturer was contractually supposed to source his own semiconductors, install it, and give the manufactured key to me. Now, since he has a shortage, I am giving him something which he was supposed to buy it from open market. So this is as good as me selling it to him and him selling it back, the entire component back to me. This is where your section 15 comes into perspective, not the free of cost things which anyhow I was supposed to give.
Supplier is liable to pay something, and on his behalf, recipient has incurred that.
So this is where your para 1.3 comes into incurred.
That is section 15. There is an inclusion into
I can imply that on his behalf, recipient is fixing. In the facts, what we are only saying is that I am required to give as a part of the contract. I am required to give XYZ. Tomorrow, for example, a chartered accountant is service. If I am going to my client's place and he is giving me a cable for 1 year for doing the audit, tomorrow will you add that value also? That I am giving you rental space for
that may be added, sir, if the contract with you and your client was very specific that you have to undertake your audit from your own premise.
So what you are saying is just
so the cost for your premise was incurred
specifically in the contract.
It should be
just because it is not spelled out in the contract.
Because that's what it is saying. Contractual obligation, because the word used in the circular says contractual obligation. But why you are not agreeing to the point of inclusions under section 15?
In fact, I was on that only 15 to
that's what I was saying. 15.
In fact,
it specifically says that if supplier is liable to pay, but recipient is incurring that, that will be.
That's the first one. Supplier is liable to pay for that cost. That's the first statement of 15(2)(b.
Yeah.
Right? That supplier has to be liable. If I am a CS service provider and I am liable to incur expenditure of my employee cost, and that employee I do not have it in.
The other way around. The client is liable to provide the facilities to do statutory.
So 15(2)(b doesn't apply whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Because supplier is not liable to provide, sir.
We'll just read that. The value of supply shall include B, any amount that the supplier is liable to pay in relation to such supply, but which has been incurred by the recipient of supply and not included in the price actually paid or payable for the goods or services or goods. According to you, why it does not fit in this 2B? Why you feel it is not?
This CA example, how does it satisfy?
It does not fit. It will not fit
in our example of case study. How does it satisfy? I am not required to pay for it. I have this. I am giving you the semiconductors. Again, the reason why.
But even if you would have not given, those tools, I would have definitely used some tools for carrying out my components, and for that I would have definitely incurred some cost.
Yes.
That is why they have said that if supplier is liable to pay and recipient has
incurred. If you would have incurred that cost, then you would have had to add. You would have added. That's fine, absolutely fine. These two are two different transactions. Just because in one transaction where you are incurring certain cost, You are adding in the other transaction where you're not incurring, you're not required to. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, because of this 15(2)(b, even though as you are putting up now that okay, you are not supposed to incur because I have not recovered anything from you, that cannot be the criteria, because under 15(2)(b they have given a specific inclusion that in the value this amount has to be included.
I'm required to pay and he incurs it.
Yes.
Here I'm not required to pay. In this example, the case study that we are seeing, I am not required to pay. I am required to give him the component.
No, supplier here in our case will be the component manufacturer, not you. So if I as a component manufacturer, when I'm supplying to you, I'm liable to pay and I'm liable to incur that cost also of those tools, which if suppose you would have not given me, I would have taken from somewhere and I would have incurred that cost.
Sorry, that is exactly my point. If I would not have given, you would have incurred, then the price should have included that.
No, but if you read that B, any
if
amount.
you have not provided that, then price would not be 1500, it might be 1800 in that case. Because he is incurring that cost.
That's why,
manufacturing is incurring that cost.
Yes.
But that's
So
why
that's why it is.
because it's an excise mindset. It's an excise mindset where we see actual value is this. It's an excise mindset.
Amortized cost का जो concept है, that in GST.
So again, from my own benefit, I am giving something free. Why it should be included?
Yes.
Because it is indirectly supplied to me only.
So something that you are giving for free for your own benefit is never part of 15(2)(b. What is included in 15(2)(b is only something that your supplier was supposed to incur. He is not in a position to incur that expense. He is not in a position to get that things, and now you are giving it.
Tomorrow the supplier could give me a quote saying that if you don't supply drawing, I will supply it at 1800. If you give me the drawing, I will supply it 1500. Then it could imply that it is for my own benefit I am giving.
That is why only they have said that it has to be included.
So they have to be two quotations, sir. Now if the 1800 quotation is approved,
So that 15(2) is really a controversial section. For my own use, I give something and then I have to pay GST on it. It is absurd.
As for this circular, there are two situations. One is where there is a contractual obligation, and one is where the supply is there's no GST chargeable because there's no contractual obligation. So in the second part, I think it's very convenient for taxpayers to just not
Put in the contract.
anything in the contract.
Yes, to that extent, yes. Yes, and to that extent, even one more thing, that although we are correlating it to section 15(2)(b, the circular is not mentioning anything about any particular section to that effect. That is one thing. And second thing is, I mean, it is not having any statutory, it is just saying that there is, because in first 2 points, they have said that nahi hai consideration, it's not a supply. And then they are bringing that contractual obligation. To that extent, yes. Because it is not mentioning anything. Yes.
Because something which the supplier should pay. So the whole intention, the legislative intention behind that provision is not, I would think it's not a query to such a kind of situation where the supplier has to pay something which the recipient is incurring. So you see the whole dynamics of it, because the supplier is procuring it himself, he's not paying for it in that context. So I don't think 15(2)(b, so here the circular is quite interesting because the only difference it makes
Contractual. Contractual obligation. And contractual obligation concept, according to me, as far as my knowledge goes, it has been brought first time in GST. In Central Excise, as you were rightly mentioning, manufacture and though that concept, obligation hai, nahi hai, according to me, that was never, there was never an issue. This legal obligation hai, iske liye it has to be included. That's first time GST going by the circular.
I beg to differ. The concept they have tried to implement even the service tax regime, Bayana Bidas and everything. They have tried to implement all these things right from pre-negative to negative list also.
Yes.
It's very understandable.
Understandable. And the point is, you know what, that as he was also mentioning, in first two they say there is no supply, there is no consideration, there is no supply, and then and no need to reverse ITC obviously, and then they have brought that if there is a contractual opportunity, it is to be included, and there is a reversal of ITC required. So I
have a query on that front. Why do we need to reverse the ITC?
Absolutely.
Why do you may want to include that price in the price of supply by the component manufacturer to the OEM manufacturer? That is okay. You apply 15(2)(b arbitrarily, whatever it is, whether it's okay or arbitrary.
I think because, I'm just going by the circular. In such cases, OEM will be required to reverse the credit availed on such modes or dies, as the same will not be considered to be provided by the OEM to the component manufacturer in the course or furtherance of former's business.
OEM's form.
OEM's form. Or maybe
But
he is
they
not
have-
into giving this to be drawings, yeah, molds and dies. Giving this molds and dies is not. So it is not in. So it is not in relation to his business. So that is why he cannot take the ITC going by section 16. Although it's
Have I
not
disposed
mentioned
of that
here.
asset?
No, he has not disposed of.
So it's going out, rules are going out.
So it's still in my assets.
Exactly.
No, it is
Still
not
remaining
disposal of
assets.
assets. It's not disposal of assets. It's not disposal.
Then-
Disposal means it is. It's not
then
disposal
there is
because it
no
is going to
supply.
come back. It is not disposed. It's not disposal.
Then there is no supply from.
Supply from
So
OEM
schedule-
to the component.
OEM to
OEM to
component.
the
Yes.
component is the manufacturer. Is there a supply there? No supply, right?
No supply.
So therefore, I should not be charging any GST.
Yes.
As a recipient of those, I should not be charging any GST. Right? So for me, I am not required to charge GST. If there is no supply by me to him, then how there is the value of that supply needs to be added?
Valuation is different from.
See, circular, what the circular says is, I have to reverse, what circular assumes is, it is a supply, and hence I have to reverse the credit, okay, and he has to reverse the credit or pay tax, and he takes credit of it, and he adds to the value. So circular assumes there is a supply, and then there is a, again, that gets added to the value.
I believe circular is not assuming on that front. If my reading is correct, understanding is correct, sir. Circular is trying to take dual benefit. One, they are adding that value of the free component to the value by the component manufacturer to the OEM and reversing the ITs in the hands of OEM. So as to not say that, yes, OEM has supplied it to him, he will take the credit, component will take the credit and then supply it back to me. The chain would have been completed. They are trying to take dual benefit over here.
Which is absurd.
Circular can change the definition of supply.
No.
It's not question of yes.
This is what this circular is.
This is absurd. Circular
So
is
para 1.3 goes absurd.
1.3 goes एकदम contrary to 1.1 and not contrary you can say, but in a different context altogether. That's what
One by one.
No, just-
Online participant, Nilesh Bhai wants to speak. Nilesh Bhai.
I just want actually one of the part of already discussed when we compare with the rule 6 of the elsewhere excise rules, valuation rule, which has categorically been mentioned where the price is not the sole consideration. And in GST valuation rule, there is no such specific rule which said where the price is not sole consideration is applicable. So is something missed out, or how should we read at that point of time? Because there is no specific rule where it says price is not sole consideration. It says only price is only not in money. So the whether additional consideration is flowing, and unlike the even though circular is saying that it's contractual obligation or not contractual obligation, if we compare with the elsewhere rule 6 say it says directly or indirectly, if it has been provided free of cost, it has to be added to your valuation. So can the department will still says that even the contractual obligation is not there, you still need to add the valuation part of it because it is a indirectly or the price is not sole consideration on that ground.
Yes, maybe the department can take, as I understand your query, what you're trying to say, suppose if there is no, forget the circular for a moment, there is no contractual obligation. Whether still department can take a stand that this is an additional consideration and it has to be included. That is your point if I understand correctly.
Absolutely. And second point is there is no specific rule covering where the price is not the sole consideration.
No, there need not be a specific rule because if you see section 15 as we were mentioning, one of the points for valuation under section 15 says price should be the sole consideration. And of course, buyer and seller are related, there should be supply, that is okay. So since price is not the sole consideration, that is why we resort to valuation rules. That is what is the point here. As you are rightly saying, okay, in Central Excise Rule 6, there was a specific inclusions wherein specifically it was mentioned. More so and so given free of cost. Specific there was a mention. Whereas if you see valuation rules under GST, whether it is rule 27 to 35, there is no specific rule which says that because they have just gone on given in money, not given in money, then distinct and related persons, then through agent and so on. Then our cost of production that they have taken, cost of manufacture, cost of provision of service rule 30 and so on. But there is no specific rule which says that if it is not, then these things have to be included. I think that is because in GST, our main section 15 itself provides for this has to be included and this has to be excluded. I think that's why in the valuation rules, there is no further any rules giving ki ye include karna chahiye, ye nahi karna chahiye. I think that is what is the, but yes, your point to say that whether department tomorrow can take a stand that since price is not the sole consideration, forget the circular for a moment, but it has to be included. Yes, and as you are also mentioning, what would be the cost? Because why you are making me to add some notional cost to that? That is also one point debatable, which may be in some good case we can argue and put forth this point. And then one more point addition to this is that whether circular will have the authority to say, or tomorrow whether the department picking up that para only can take a stand that nahi isme to aise likha hai, aapke contract mein hai, you include. In a case where our other arguments, what we discussed, whether they will stand. According to me, CBC circular cannot be taken support of by the department to say that it has to be included. But as of now, as we are discussing on this issue, apart from what provisions we discussed and this circular, according to me, there is no other statutory this thing which will say whether it has to be includable or not included. I hope I answers.
Yes.
The department is not by the circular. So
Yes.
as far as it says that there is no contractual obligation, then you cannot collect GST. So the only point is when there is a contractual obligation. To that extent, if there is a contractual obligation and the manufacturer charges as per the contract some amount towards the supply of this components, then he will collect that amount as per the contract. But is there any restriction of the amount which he collects to add it to the value of the supply? Why not? I'm just thinking, because if he collects that amount from the supplier, the person who's supplying the parts, then can that amount which he collects be added to the value which that person is supplying here and GST payable on that value? Because I mean, I don't see any reason why GST cannot be paid, because this is a deemed or notional kind of thing where the GST will be payable on the value which the part manufacturer supplies to him. So whatever he collects, that same value
he's going to add in that.
Why not? I mean, that's a department's argument.
That is a department, sir.
Yeah, but that's why not.
And binding on this, as you rightly mentioned, the circular is binding on the department. It's never binding on the assessee. We can take a different plea, like we are discussing now, whether that apply on. But yes, department, in my opinion, I feel that it is a weapon in their hands, which they may use. And one more point, what we discussed, suppose I don't purposely, I don't want to keep it as a contractual obligation. So whether I will not be, I can say, since I'm not covered in that para 1.3 of the circular, I will not add. Again, when I say I will not add, one more point remains whether 15(2)B will come into the picture. Department may say, okay, 1.3 mein nahi baith rahe, but what about 15(2)B? Usme to hai. That may be one of the arguments. Does not apply. Yes.
But still, as for the
Circular, yes.
I mean, we are talking about the value of the transaction.
Yes.
The value is something which whatever is charged may be added to the value which is again charged to him.
Yes.
You see that I don't see
Yeah.
any problem. I mean, that's how
because even as one more aspect of it, as far as central excise, there was a specific formula wherein the usage of the molds, based on the usage it was added. So there was some specification to that. There was a specific number of days used, number of months, and then we used to calculate, and then it was added. So can we move to the second? I think with one we'll, otherwise we'll have all the arguments. Okay. Yeah. So I think the second one is with respect to one more favorite issue, wherein always we are with respect to issue of credit notes. I supplied certain plastic crates to one, and some defect was found, or maybe he was not happy with my product supplied to him. So he says, okay, I agree. X says, okay, I'll reduce your value to that extent for the deficiency, and then credit notes are issued to that effect. Now, what should be done for that extra tax paid by X? Whether he should go for filing refund claim, or maybe he can adjust that excess payment of tax in the subsequent periods. So I have been told that I have to only answer. I will only put the question.
Yes.
Answer I have to not get. So I'm keeping.
No, you will answer
afterwards. Okay.
Can be adjusted in
I think let us give everybody some time. They'll come out with some unique thoughts.
Yeah, but he can start.
You can start.
Yeah.
Chairman is saying this.
adjustment, I think we can take an adjustment. It's a deficiency in service section of 24 or 34 where it talks about credit notes.
Credit notes can be issued. Only one thing is there, that credit notes while issuing, as you rightly pointed out, section 34, there is a specific restriction that they have to be issued only by due date, I mean September, following the financial year, or annual filing. And normally ho jata hai ki September ka file kar hi dete. It is very, I mean, I don't know, there is a situation where you wait till 31st December. So if credit, because sometimes what happens practically, this is okay, provision is there, we have understood, okay. But sometimes it may happen, 1-2 saal ke baad hua, some product. Then for me, I have already paid that tax. Okay, a commercial credit note I may issue, jisko GST may not be affected. But what do I do of that extra tax? Then now second question, chalo assuming ye nahi ho raha hai, I claim a refund. Then refund also, okay, you will say credit note issue kiya, I have not passed on the tax burden because credit note issue hua, ab dekho mera accounts, I have shown as this, that. But till to date, as far as litigation, as far as I know, refund ka मामला जब भी रहता है, it is very difficult to get that refund because there will be n number of questions being posed. कि आपने इनवॉइस तो रेज किया था, इनवॉइस में टैक्स अमाउंट रिफ्लेक्ट हुआ था, that recipient has taken credit of that, ITC आपको रिवर्स करना है, whether he has reversed or no, all those things. So, and if you see that section 34, there is a proviso also in that which says that proviso provided that no reduction in output tax liability of the supplier shall be permitted if the incidence of tax and interest on such supply has been passed on to any other person. So they are very, very intelligent to say, even if they have, because as earlier I was mentioning, even this concept of giving credit note was never legalized, or statutory support in the provisions was never there. Again, it was through judgments that they said, Addison and many judgments that effect, they said yes, but there was no provision to issue credit note. And so now they have brought that, but very cleverly with a bar saying that, now how will I prove this? Suppose, assuming, now forget this case, okay, I issued everything, मैंने invoice issue किया. Then there is a particular section in GST which says that whenever you are charging some amount, say tax or something, it has to form a part of your invoice. You have to show it separately कि देखो ये value है और ये tax है. Specifically it says, okay, now मैंने तो invoice दिया, 2 साल बाद credit note हो गया. Okay, credit note में नहीं हो रहा है, मैं refund claim कर रही हूँ. Then I can prove that I have really not passed on that amount. Okay, you will say I have shown in receivables, I have not expensed it out, I have paid this money back. But it is a very practically, it becomes very difficult when you're arguing. See, now provision dekh rahe, we say aise karo, waise karo. As an advice, I'm telling, yes, aise karo. But when I'm standing tomorrow in the court of law with a case and I have to really satisfy the judges and with my opponent, who is also equally and maybe double prepared than me. So, because it's refund ka मामला है भाई, tax recovery is different thing, refund is different thing. When the opponent who is arguing, when he's especially for refund case, they feel, sometimes I ask them also just jocularly, आपके pocket से नहीं जा रहा है. You don't have to feel so like fight it out, like ऐसा नहीं है, it's okay. So so that time, and he will try, आप दिखाएंगे, चलो see, this is the invoice, this is the credit. नहीं, but सर ये तो अमाउंट ये दिख रहा है क्रेडिट नोट में, ये क्रेडिट नोट में आपने इनवॉइस नंबर लिखा नहीं है, आई डोंट नो ये क्रेडिट नोट किसका है, आई डोंट नो. फिर डेट, अभी जीएसटी में, एंड जीएसटी में वन मोर, स्टिल वी हैव नॉट, GST is not formed, so I don't know what will be the scenario. But in GST, when we argue with all the digitalized things, it will be all the way more difficult. I will say मैंने तो क्रेडिट नोट अपलोड किया था within that dates. बोलेगा नहीं हमारे पोर्टल में तो ये दिन को ही दिखा, नहीं आपने नहीं किया था, I don't know, you are not fitting in that. So I really don't know tomorrow, just that when we argue this case, because see, till now it was manual. We have argued wherein we have shown manually, and when the client comes, we always tell them कि भाई you give me correlation. ये 4 invoice थे, ये 4 invoice का ये credit note है, ये amount है, ये credit note, ये amount. You give me like that. So when I am showing or producing, I show that person like that. How will you correlate? Credit note में invoice number होना चाहिए. Yes, ये invoice, ये value. तो इसमें तो है ही नहीं, अभी सवाल नहीं है. So all these things now in digitalized format, I really don't know how we will be able to. And I don't know, means when we upload anything on the GST port, normally what queries or from the clients we get is, मैडम वो निकल गया, मैंने सबमिट दबा दिया. So then I always ask them, आपने print लिया होगा ना? Maybe some copy or something may be there. You must have taken a screenshot or something like that. But see, अभी cases हो रहे हैं. But when we actually that is formed, and when we are arguing, whether that time if I tell a person कि अरे वो 17-18 का था ना, थोड़ा आप बता सकते हैं ये डेट को अपलोड किया, या आपको ये मैसेज आया था when I uploaded, कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुआ था, whether it will be really possible for me to do that. I really doubt. And the client will always say, मैडम मैंने तो किया था. And see, for small parties, we feel अरे refund, but for small parties उनका पैसा उतना सी, it is hard-earned money. So वो लोग it is, and when you're standing in the court of law, judge will ask you, आप मुझे दिखाओ, आप जो भी बोल रहे हैं मुझे दिखाओ, I need to see it, what you're saying. Because obviously he's right in his position. I'm not blaming anyone. He's right in his position to ask me to do. But with this digitalized and all the things, I really don't know. So anyway, so on this as we section 5480, 5480, it will be tax, no? It is a tax. Yeah, excess tax. It is excess tax paid, no? Here, because we already paid, and then we are saying we will reduce to that extent.
Under that is about 70 cents. So this will go any other.
Any other. Yes.
When you are reducing the taxable value, you supply commodities and you, as in this example, 10% discount. So then you issue a credit note or a new invoice or what? First you have to issue a new invoice.
First invoice gaya mera 100. Let us take an example. 100 I'll issue. I've paid. And then it's not actually discount. It will be that I will issue a credit because I paid 100. So he also assumed that it's 100. But then later on I reduce ki 100 nahi bhai, say 80 bharna chahiye tha. Then for 20 I'll issue a credit note. Now the problem here is if I issue within the same financial year. So then I file my GSTR 3B या maybe the annual return या maybe आपका GSTR 9 या 9C है जब आप reconcile करने बैठते हैं. तो in that remarks column I may show कि अरे ये actually invoice ये issue हुआ था, but आप देखिए credit note ये entry पे ये entry हुआ है. So if you correlate that, you will come to know कि देखो that is the reason that this credit note has been issued. So my actual is only 80, not 100. I need not issue a subsequent new invoice. According to me, original invoice will correlate with that. That's why I was mentioning credit note will mention the invoice number. But again, as we were discussing, the problem is suppose that a credit note he comes to me after 2 years. जो time निकल गया. Then what will I do? That is my point. So then, कुछ भी I'll not get benefit out of it. I can issue a commercial credit note for my accounting purpose, जहाँ पे मैं उसको दिखाऊं. But GST credit note issue करके first ही objection आएगा because what they will do, आप जब credit note upload करोगे, वो date आएगा उसमें. And if you see credit note में क्या क्या mention होना चाहिए, उसमें specifically है invoice number होना चाहिए. So if you see the invoice number and date, वो तभी ही it will not allow you, or maybe if it allow you, they will just reject it. Or objection is very easy, na? Because when they open the portal, everything is open to them. It's not pre-GST era. So that's why, according to me, that, and even refund also, although we are saying it will be a bit difficult as far as unjust and issue. Otherwise, okay, I have paid excess tax, there is no. Then third thing over here, suppose whether I can take directly credit since I have paid excess tax. Suo moto credit. That was also a burning issue. Whether I can do that under GST. Because excise also was not, that is too, you know.
Someone has to reverse it then only.
Someone has to reverse it then only. Because it will be very difficult. I'm just asking, like in excise, we used to do, which of course was objected and it was never said. But whether that thing can be done on my own, saying, informing the department कि भाई ऐसे है, I'll pay something, or maybe electronic rate ledger में तो आएगा नहीं, because आप जब तक upload नहीं करते, 2A में ये अभी तो restriction भी आ गया है कि 2A में जब तक it's not there, you will not get. So that you can say that benefit or that way also is there for me. So as an assessee now, assuming I am the assessee in this case, what should I do? That was that. See, when I was making this case studies, I was also thinking practically. See, there are two things. One is law is providing for something. But law may provide, but practically whether it will be possible for an assessee, especially in a case where abhi kab litigation hoga and kab, you know, the number of time which is going now, it would be very difficult. That is what I feel.
Two things here. One, so far as evidence in future. Now, because of the IRN, probably you may have that, you know, that code. Okay, so because of the IRN, you may be able to do it. We have to see how that IRN can be, you know, we can read it and QR so with that IRN. So that maybe we may have evidences during the court once the IRN is made applicable to all the SECs. So that will be one evidence. Second, maybe when in the tribunal.
What is this IRN?
When you
invoice, I thought some other digitalized some
invoice
concept.
reference number which is the invoice portal of the gives.
Okay.
That can be used as
Sir,
an evidence. This was actually filed. This was actually
since you are talking, we'll have now. Just joking, huh? Don't take it.
So this was actually reported on the GST portal, or this was actually raised the invoice was generated. Probably that can be the evidence because on the government's portal, the invoice credit note is there.
Okay.
Maybe since you're saying that, how do you get it? Maybe all the litigation we might have to make even GST a respondent, so that wherever you get any such stuff, you ask GST to provide the data for to provide us this data.
No, that has to be done because it will be very difficult otherwise. It will be very difficult.
One completely different solution to it. let the recipient, forget about 2 months, don't go refund and all. Let the recipient raise an invoice of agreeing to tolerate an act and discharge GST, everything gets settled. Only unless and until there is a trade difference, then there can be
then there is a
GST initial goods and this 18%, there is a difference, then there is a problem. Otherwise, the things get settled like this.
It appears in 2B and take credit.
Take credit.
It doesn't matter. Whenever you want to do, you do it.
That is a good suggestion. We move to the next, or
Just one more thing.
Yeah.
As for this case study, you are talking about refund, right? Then you can give a refund because assuming the credit note is issued in time, the department gives you the refund. I mean, within suppose 3-4 months. But there's a second point is that whether the tax can be adjusted against the subsequent tax supplies. I don't think we've done because there is the reduction. Whatever you paid, can that be adjusted against other tax supplies?
see, it is not actually other tax supply. What we are referring to there is by issuance of credit note only. Because once I issue the credit note, my output tax liability will get reduced. That's what that section was saying. But it will not be. It will not happen if it is credit note has been issued beyond that period. That is one thing. One more thing. What we were the reason for putting that question was that when I'm filing my GSTR 3B, whether there is an option to rectify that in 39, I think 9 that is there. But the problem is practically, provision is there under 39.9. There is a provision wherein it says you can do. It says if you have put some incorrect particulars, but it should not be result of any audit, scrutiny, etc. Normal. मुझे समझा कर गलत and I did. But there again, the problem will be practically. I don't think as of now that GSTR 3B once I have filed it, suppose मैंने भरा and then I click the button submit. I don't think as of now they are allowing me to rectify. Because beach mein in middle there was a this thing, that yet to be filed as like option they had brought. Wherein instead of suppose I saw and then I don't want to submit, मुझे लग रहा है कि कुछ ये है, then yet to be filed I go and then there's a dashboard and I go back again and I check and do. But as far as my knowledge goes with whatever I have heard from people, it's not allowing.
My question is that once you have a reduction in tax liability, you already discharge that tax liability. Can you adjust that in subsequent tax periods? So what I'm trying to say is that the tax paid is any provision for adjusting that extra tax paid in subsequent tax period. Means you already paid the tax. So there's a provision where after paying that tax during a particular period, you are adjusted in another period.
See, it may not correlate to tax of that particular year. Like for example, I'm saying credit note बाद में, yes, you can do that. अगर credit note जो month में आप issue करेंगे, वो साल का जो output tax liability है, that will get ready. You cannot say, you can, instead of refund, yes, obviously, because you cannot correlate to that. अरे वो जो मैंने भरा था अभी, that will, because वो तो tax आपने भर दिया. Unless you have opted for the option of rectifying, which according to me possibly now it is not there on the portal. Although 39.9 में provision is there, but मुझे that's what I got to know that अभी वो नहीं है. Once you have filed now, you cannot take it back and rectify. वो file हो गया. But जब भी मैं credit note issue करूंगी, and credit note is how the month in which I issue, I'll give the details. So automatically output tax liability in that particular year will get reduced. You cannot correlate. You cannot say कि अरे वो साल का था तो वो मैं अभी register करूँ, ऐसे नहीं. वो तो आपने भर दिया. That's why one option instead of getting into this hassle is refund claim. But refund ka, how foolproof you are that you have not.
In fact, under refund, one more challenge which we may face is what would be the relevant date for the purpose of refund? Will we look at the date of the credit note or will we look at the original payment of tax? Because it says the date of payment of tax will become the relevant date.
From section 54 language. We'll just check that. I think it's date of invoice or it will be last as a date of payment करके है.
That is for reduction of tax, right? But you already paid the tax. So can you adjust that tax?
If you consider that as input tax credit, then only you can adjust it.
By filing a return for that period. No, say that I paid the tax in the previous period.
My way of credit note is reduced.
You're reducing the tax. थोड़ा नीचे जाएंगे recommended. In case of wait. In case of 0 rated 9. Second, issue of invoice where payment of services has been received in prior. Okay. थोड़ा नीचे. I think it is date of payment of tax only. जिस दिन आपने पहले बार जो भरा था, I think invoice, from that I think it will be 2 years.
But my right to go for the refund arises only by virtue of this credit.
True.
Not before that. So, in fact, a similar cases of these types are where, particularly where I have, let's say, booked a flat, and subsequently I cancel that flat. Now, because it's beyond that period of September, the credit notes are not permissible, and that is where most of the buyers are opting for a refund claim of the tax, which is not adjusted by the developers. So there, on a practical front, what people are doing, they are getting certifications from the developers saying that this is the tax which we have paid, these are the dates by which we have paid, and this is the credit note against this.
So give us the refund.
Yes. And there, I think there is a couple of decisions which says the relevant date in that case will have to be the date of cancellation. In fact, here they have not factored in that as a condition. But there they have gone ahead and said, look at the date of cancellation or the credit note which actually gives a rise to the.
Because adjusting it in a subsequent tax period is quite complicated, because once you pay the tax for a particular period, to adjust it in a subsequent tax period is like quite difficult for the department also and for us also. Like, we can't just file another return in a subsequent tax period and go and pay that to another.
Yeah, other cases here, how are we claiming refund? We are claiming refund, stating underlying presumption or underlying statement is that the tax that I paid on my original invoice was incorrect. I paid higher tax. Therefore, when I do this, therefore your relevant date becomes the invoice date rather than me as a.
Because see, what happens is ultimately the entire base is the invoice. Credit note agreed, it has sanctity. Fortunately, in GST, like in excise, we used to fight. Because excise में always the viewpoint of department was that it does not have any legal sanctity. Credit note किधर लिखा ही नहीं है, invoice. But GST fortunately by their section 34 they have given. But according to me the base will go to invoice. Although I am with you on the point कि my right to refund arose जब credit note issue हुआ. Actually, strictly speaking. But unfortunately in this relevant date they have not carved out. Like in the earlier I think in service tax regime, in export of services. For export of services, there was no relevant date in the refund section. And what used to happen, export of service, actually when it will be complete, when I receive, the foreign exchange, and that was not carved out in the refund sanction. There were so many judgments. And then finally it was settled by a larger bench wherein they said that export of service to carve nahi kiya hai isme. And then they brought that and it was incorporated. Export of service mein relevant date will be when you actually receive that foreign exchange. And that also why they brought, because RBI mein there was a provision. आपको 3 months time है, within 3 months आपको मिलता है, then also it will be considered. So that's why they brought. So I think this can be one of the, argument in this case also, कि such kind of a exigency has not been carved out specifically in this section 54. We'll move to the next. I think this is our Colombia one. So I have 12 branches in other states. I have my firms also, and I have independent parties also. Valuation has to be done how? Whether it should be, we should go to Rule 30 or what should be, whether we should take the price charge to the independent buyer, how do we go?
So I would like to compare this with the transfer pricing under income tax, because actually when the parties are related, it's not at arm's length. And in that case, the transaction value is always
doubted.
It's always less than.
It's not doubted. You can say subject to
so
condition.
In this case study, I think if you are supplying to independent parties, the value will be much higher. I mean, logically speaking, and if you are supplying to your own firms, then the value, I mean, the department will never accept that you're supplying to your own firms at the same price you're supplying to independent parties. So on that count, I don't think the transaction value can be, I mean, it can't be that you're taking the transaction value as what you're supplying to independent parties as the one you're supplying to your firm, and it can't be the other way around also. Like, you can't say that this should be less or more, or it should be the transaction value. It has to be independently determined under 30. I think that's so.
But why do we directly jump to Rule 30? Is my first question. Because as you rightly pointed out at the beginning only, they are distinct persons going by 25(4). Because 25(4) says that if I have I'm one over here in one state, I'm one's registration in another state, I will be considered as a distinct purpose as far as GST is concerned. There is no doubt on that because they are my own branches, my own firms. So once I am a distinct person, why I should not go directly to Rule 28? Because Rule 28 of the Rule 28 specifically carves out for related person and distinct person. Wherein it says first you go to open market value, your point. Open market value means we can say independent parties ka jo value hai wo. Then if that is not available, assuming for a moment in our case it is available, but just let us go through the provision. Assuming that open market value is not available, then maybe goods, services, like, kind and quality. Then third, our point, if value is not determinable under A or B, value determined under Rule 30 or 31 in that order. But if you go to the second proviso now, provided further that where the recipient is eligible to full ITC, eligible, they have rightly used the word eligible. Eligible means that आप 16 देखो, 17 देखो, सब देख के आओ. Eligible. Eligible for full ITC. That is again an important point. अगर वो कुछ exempt manufacture कर रहा है, exempt ले रहा है कुछ, whether he is entitled to full ITC or what I am paying is one point. Dispute on that. So why I should not, instead of independent parties का मेरे पास है open market value, but I feel why I should not directly go, assuming that is an assumption that full ITC उसको मिल रहा है, then why I can't go directly to second person? Now we all can discuss. Yeah, you have something.
As far as this point of eligibility is concerned, if you can head to section 16, the heading. What section 16 reads? You have a soft copy? No.
No, read from here. Have the book. The flaps.
So section 16, where I read the very heading, it's read as eligibility and conditions for taking input tax credit.
Okay.
Section 17 is apportionment of credit and block credits.
True.
And 17(5) is overriding 16.
Correct.
Not with a non-obstant clause.
Non-obstant clause.
So while determining the eligibility to take the credit, I should only be concerned with section 16 or 17(5) to that extent, because 17(5) overrides 16. So if I'm eligible under 16, or if it's not blocked under 17(5), I'm eligible. Thereafter, the apportionment portion comes in at later date. Whether I'm supposed to reverse it in a proportionate manner for commons, inputs and input services on that part. So 17(2) or 17(3) may not have so much of implication of the second proviso in my opinion. That is what my viewpoint is.
Yes. Because as you rightly use the word.
Sorry, why full is mentioned? What is full? What is the relevance of full? Full credit, eligible for full input tax credit.
He's talking about the second proviso. See, one thing is, as you rightly mentioned, 17 uses the word blocked and apportioned. दोनों words है. Apportioned, yes, I agree with you. मुझे 100 मिलना चाहिए, 80 मिलना चाहिए, 40 मिलना चाहिए. Apportioned. Blocked means what? I'm not going to get at all. इसके लिए that word full is there. And to answer your question, wherein you said that whether 16 and 17(5) मुझे दोनों देखना है, या सिर्फ मुझे 16 देखना है, या 17(5) also have to cover and come back. According to me, I have to cover 17(5) and come back, because 17(5) starts with a non-obstanting clause. I may be entitled. I'm using everything for my business. 16(1) use in course or furtherance of business. I'm using, no doubt. But 17(5) में exclusion है, I'm strictly covered. Catering service. Am I not using? I'm a company. आपका जो था, इतने workers है, legal obligation. Now that is a different issue. Whether that legal obligation in that 17, whether it will apply to all the clauses or it will apply to only one clause, that is a different issue altogether. Although as of now there are against rulings which say that it will apply only to that last portion. It will not apply to all of these. But assuming for a moment, keeping that aside. So something which is blocked, I'm not going to get at all. So am I eligible for that? 16(1) I'm eligible. But because of that non-obstancy clause, I'm not eligible. I'm not eligible. I'm eligible, but I'm blocked for taking that much. So according to me, 16(1), yes, you're eligible, but please go to 17(5). देखो किधर covered तो नहीं है, and then come. That's why eligible for full ITC. And I think that full ITC na is for कुछ exempt वगैरह if he is manufacturing something like that हो सकता है, because full ITC means entirely I am taxable goods, पूरा tax में भर रही हूँ, then I can maybe take credit of whatever invoice he has issued. So my question here is why I don't go directly to second proviso, and why you are putting me in that थोड़ा rule 20 नहीं even that not even 30 वो first थोड़ा rule 28 line हाँ open market. Why you are telling me to take independent parties? Why you are not allowing me to go to the second proviso? And there is no sequence. If you read anywhere, it is not written कि आप पहले वो follow करो. It is not written anywhere. So if I am complying with that second proviso, and if you see first proviso and second proviso, both are covering different exigencies. First proviso, as such, if that person related, unrelated, वो है वो, and is at the option of the supplier again. Option of the supplier, you can take 90%. So it's a different situation altogether. And second proviso is a different situation. And second proviso has no bearing that you please go there. आप comply कर रहे हैं तो ही इधर आना, नहीं comply करे तो इधर आओ, ऐसा नहीं है. So why I cannot opt for the second proviso, and why you are telling me to take independent parties, or for that matter, as we have posed a question in C, why you are putting me in C?
In fact, Rule 28 is more specific than Rule 30.
Yes, so because it is distinct related person, it have been carved out in that. And I think ABC में if open market value नहीं है like kind, and then to Rule 30 or 31, but why that proviso then? They should have not given. That's what I was mentioning in earlier, that this revenue neutral, they have realized that revenue neutral concept jo tha, now they have legalized by giving this proviso. Because there are many issues wherein people say, हमने mutually agreed charge किया. Like there was a case of BG Shirke, wherein I myself had represented, wherein the problem was same, like head office here, they are doing something, and they were charging lump sum. It is not a case of I have some formula कि चलो ये branch है तो I will charge 100, ये है तो 80, ऐसा नहीं है 5,000, कभी 10,000, कभी 20,000. So I was questioned when I was arguing before the AR, wherein they said, madam, you should have some sequence. ना आप कैसे cost लगा रहे हो? इसको 5,000, कभी आप 10,000. Then my argument there was, does it say anywhere in Rule 28 कि you take valuation as per costing principles? Yeah, you take valuation as per this thing. I don't think it is mentioned anywhere. So why? Where is the bar? What I am doing wrong? If I take 5,000 and I am taking credit of that, and that argument was accepted. That second proviso, yes, you can go directly to second proviso. Of course, condition is that eligible. That's why I was stressing on that word, eligible for full ITC. So I think why in this case now, in our coming to our case study, why I can't go to second proviso, and why the department is wrong in telling me कि आप Rule 30 जाओ, या maybe आप open market value जो independent parties का जाओ. Is there any legally? Am I doing anything wrong if I go directly to second proviso?
No, I think you can get it.
So, so that was my, that's what the reason I put in this, because I don't think, of course, see, as a department, suppose I'm in a department, I may say, अरे आप तो कुछ भी value लेंगे, 100 भी ले सकते, 0 नहीं ले सकते, because there is a specific, you cannot say कुछ value ही नहीं लिया, and then that is a totally different rude kind of a thing. But some value is there. Where there is a bar.
Not even some value. I prefer to have it as some reasonable value. So
and maybe you may have some support to that. Just like suppose मैंने 100 किया, तो I am saying कि ये branch जो है ना, इनका normally profitability ये रहता है. I know. तो इसके लिए मैं इनको ज़्यादा costing करूँ. या फिर इनका इतना नहीं है, तो मैं इनको कम करूँ. That I know. As a company, when I sit with my accounts, I know कि अरे गए साल ये ऐसे था, या going by the preceding this thing ये ऐसे है.
There are three values. One is the arm's length value. The second value is the discount, the value which you are doing between related persons. And the third value I see is that.
What are you reading?
Market value.
What are you reading? The provision.
Case study.
Case study.
The third one, where you're talking about the second provision. There are three values.
Independent parties का है.
There's a normal transaction value or discounted value, which are in between related persons. And the third value is the Rule 30 value.
Yes.
So both the values, that is the open market value and the Rule 30 value, is actually prejudicial to the taxpayer.
Yes.
Because the open market value is the value which are trading
independent parties. Normally also. Yes.
The private party, and the value which is the related value. I mean, that is what we want. I mean, we don't want the open market value or the value under Rule 30.
Correct.
So what I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't focus on the second proviso, because that talks about the open market value, which is the So we should try to incorporate the value which is between the skills. We should justify the value, because every actor will have some value.
Yes.
Between trading.
Because it can't happen. It can't happen that there is no value.
30, which is
Yeah.
worse than open market value.
Rule 30 is cost of, and again there will be an issue because Rule 30 says cost of manufacture or cost of this thing or cost of provision of service. So then there is a question there. आपने कैसे costing किया? फिर कौन से accounting standard में बैठा?
You know how they are.
किस में बैठा? आप बोल रहे ये include नहीं किया? अरे आपके trial balance में इसमें तो दिखा रहा है ये expense, whether this was included while costing. Because nowadays with the online thing, they they see all the things together. Like income tax में आपका ये income दिखाया हुआ है, आपने service tax भरा था क्या इसके ऊपर? They also know actually it can't happen. It really can't happen. But questions are asked that way, and then we have to answer. And while answering that, you have to literally give all your, open up a Pandora's box wherein you will give everything. ये मेरा income है, I'm manufacturing this, ये income है. We can take. It will support our. But my point there is, it will definitely strengthen our case if you're giving, no doubt. But my point again is, although I may sound very absurd, whether there is a requirement for a certification under that second proviso. If I only satisfy full ITC मिल रहा है, whether there is any legal requirement. Okay, if I'm doing for my benefit, कि मैं दिखा रही हूँ department, देखो भाई, I have not just taken head off. But whether there is a requirement. See, if it's at opinion stage, we normally prefer नहीं बाबा आप कुछ certification दे दो. But if I'm arguing in court of law, I will always say that there is no legal requirement. At least law has not provided for that. And the reason for that, again, I'm saying is that the revenue neutral concept has been kept in their mind, back of their mind, while bringing this product. Takes the credit.
How can you be dependent on?
It would be eligible.
That's why the word used is eligible. I have to only see whether it is fitting in that section 16 या section as a catering है या something which is clearly barred. Then I can't. I have to only show that is eligible. वो ले रहा है कि नहीं ले रहा है. They are not saying you ascertain whether he's take नहीं है. What it is eligible. So once I prove to the department, it is eligible. So once I prove कि क्या है ये, some goods I'm sending which he is using further for me. So eligible है. It is not covered in 1675. So my job is to show it is eligible. They don't need to.
Schedule 1 says without consideration.
So the 180 days will not.
There is no provision for that.
In Schedule 1, which says that it will be considered as a supply without consideration, there is a specific entry which says that supply of goods or services between related and distinct persons as specified in 1625. So there is consideration का सवाल नहीं है.
In fact, this proviso government actually wants to carve out all the litigation. Because
Yes.
This is a revenue neutral situation. I charge, he tells the credit. So why?
There is no loss.
Valuation?
There is no loss to the government, no loss at all to the government exchequer. But still litigations are on. That is the reason.
And the value which you are supplying and maybe not arm's length, maybe arm's length. And in that case, if it's arm's length, then why should you take open market value just because he's claiming the input tax credit at full? You got my point. So that is another situation.
That can be an important one, different viewpoint to that.
Yes.
Shall we move to next? Yeah,
So
this,
for you, we can go to second proviso.
according to me, yes. Because there are rulings also. Of course, rulings I'm not stressing much, but they are there on to that effect.
Right. Okay.
Now this again, coming to our earlier question, wherein I'm an exporter of garments, and for manufacturer, I'm providing some machinery on rental basis to the supplier. So department says market value, whatever rent is prevailing in the market, I have to consider that. So what should we do? What should be the cost of rent? Whether it should be included. If it is includable, then whether we should take the rent prevailing independent iska lena hai, ya concessional. Anything I can take concessional.
Assuming they are not related.
No, we are not related. No, yeah.
Is this notional?
Notional or maybe okay, you can take as notional rent.
Means he's just giving the
Machine, and he's not charging anything. He's not charging anything for that.
Notional rent.
Whether it has to be included. First of all, but department's point may be that जो rent, suppose I would have taken on rent from somebody else, so उसका जो rent होगा, maybe that whether I should consider and whether I should add it.
Price is the sole consideration. That is the issue.
First, So हम इतना debate किए ना, वापस we are going there. Whether price is the sole consideration is the point.
You are exporting, right? So there is a requirement for the revenue.
No, we are talking about the earlier transaction, not the export transaction. Whether it should be added, because that machinery is used for manufacture of the garments. Again, just correlating to the whether we can take to rule. It's just whether we can go to that. No, I've just given whether it is.
You.
I did not use that word.
Yes. So
Yes, some to discuss.
yes.
I think we'll have to ascertain whether price is the sole
Yes,
consideration.
exactly.
If we are able to do that, it cannot be.
Correct.
Otherwise, there is a problem.
Otherwise, there is a problem. And suppose I'm not able to show or evidence that the price is not the sole consideration, then in that case, I have to go to valuation rules and I will go to rule 27, not to rule 28. Open market value. Jo rent, if I would have taken from somebody else, jo rent hoga, I will have to take that. Because it will be difficult for me to show that although I have used that machinery, whether price what I'm charging, if he is not charging me any rent, then whether जो price में charge करो, has it been influenced कि चलो भाई आपका machine आ रहा है तो बाकी लोगों को मैं 100 को दे रही हूँ, but आपको मैं 80 को दे रही हूँ. So then price is not the sole consideration. Then I have to pay on 100. Rule 27 and not rule 28.
Contractually, there is nothing.
No. Contractually, there is
I
nothing.
think in this case, if I can prove similarly that yes, if another manufacturer also gives me machine and I'm still charging him also 80, and that was his obligation to give me machine, I think still correlate that way.
Yes, comparable price, like we have in custom.
Similar situations where I'm getting machines from my recipient for other parties also, I'm charging him 80 only. I'm not charging him 90.
But that will not ascertain whether price is the sole consideration. We need to ascertain price.
I'm trying to determine my open market value for the supply that I am giving.
Rule 23.
That's what. Rule 27.
What's the open market value?
That is open market value.
Yes.
Suppose assuming what he is saying is be 80, then it's I can whether why I should not say that that is an open market value.
You have to identify all the situations in that case.
Only thing is that price again is not the sole.
I can understand why the suppose there is some rent charge in another situation for the letting of the machinery. So why would it be added to the price of the garments? I just want to know that. Why will the interest, the rent be added to the price of the garments? Or under what provision or under what law?
Again, we will go to 15(2)(b) only, which was a controversial. That was the reason that I put both the ways, because I knew first में बहुत ये होने वाला. Then 15(2)(b) whether it can apply here, why it should not
The
apply.
fundamental of the government is that tomorrow you buy a piece of cloth, you give it to your tailor. वो बोलते हैं पास मशीन मेरी खराब हो गई है, आपकी घर की मशीन लेके जाओ. तो शर्ट की सिलाई 500 रुपए देते हैं तो उसको 500 दोगे वापस. अरे भाई मैं मशीन यूज कर रहा है. I'll pay you this. But his stitching charges originally was supposed to be 500. So revenue, what's they're trying to put for that, since he's charging me 400, there should be 100 additional amount that should be added towards the machinery rental. The cost that he was supposed to incur. He was liable for the machine, pay for the machine, but you have incurred that cost.
Okay.
So
That is what. So again,
fundamental
it
thing.
goes to 15(2)(b), because 15(2)(b) is a. I mean, it is a big thing. Although you just feel a simple as supplier liable to be, recipient is incurred, but practically to put into that, it is a very big, gigantic thing. That 15(2)(b).
Whether
And since
15(2)(b) should be relevant or 15(4) should be relevant.
15(2)(b)
is very restrictive.
You're paying the price of the machine. You're not paying any price for the machine. It's your own machine. And the recipient is paying okay to see. But
1 second, we'll just see 15. 15(2)(b) is any amount that a supplier is liable to pay in relation to such supply, but which has been incurred by the recipient of supply. Again, going by this, if we say, suppose I would have not taken the machine from him, I would have used खुद का machine तो अलग बात है, but हाँ, same thing, liable to pay. Then again that contractual thing.
Now, if you go to 15(4), see what we are saying, price is not the sole consideration. So
where the value cannot be. That's why we are going to rule 27.
Correct. So I am saying 15(2)(b) never triggers. You go to 15(4).
His point is that directly go to 15(4) to say that price is not the sole consideration, and go to rule 27.
Rule 27.
That also.
Supply services.
Go to 15(2)(c).
Charge.
Incidental expenses including so and so charged by the supplier. Your rent we are not recovering anything, na?
More of composite supply.
हाँ, that right. Packing वगैरह जो रहता है.
This is assuming that we lost the case and some value has to be attributed, right? No, of course. So other village value will be attributed.
Under service tax, we had similar issues where the deposits which were collected for rent. These were generally tax-free or interest-free.
Interest-free. That also we are having.
Notionally wanted to add this into the value.
Yes, that we are having.
Where they, sorry.
That one case study is there. Because that is also a burning issue. Let's move to next. Or?
Yeah, one second.
Yeah.
Nilesh Bhai wants to speak. Nilesh Bhai. Nilesh Bhai, you can unmute yourself and talk.
Yes.
Nothing right now. I'll go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Case study 5 now. This I think we were discussing at length. Same thing, that Colombia wala. Same it is. So if anybody wants to.
We are talking about the cost of various costs, not only salary, but various costs.
No, the reason for putting this was that we all know, okay, Colombia is there, it says it has to be included, it is supply, wo sab theek hai. But as an assessee, can I deviate from this ruling? Can I argue that this ruling is not applicable for some reason? That was the basic purpose of putting forth this case study. Because as I was mentioning earlier, if I am employed by XYZ company and I am doing something in my head office, see, you cannot say that I am employed by this head office. Whether we say like that, no. A promotion of sales, audit के लिए आप company देखते हो, and it is obviously it is going to benefit everybody. And this cross charge का जो है, that is actually an accounting concept because I want to know the profitability of each of my branches. For that reason, I'm allocating that cost to them. कि भाई देखो, I have done this work and this has benefited you. So you incur this cost. Why are you putting on my head? That is the reason that cross charge thing is there, which is normally recognized in accounting also, and it's very old concept. It's not something new. So now this kind of a mechanism saying that it's a supply, and to be very honest, the reasoning given in the advance ruling also, although it may not be in favor of trade, but according to me it's very valid also on other points. See, when you see a ruling, we see both the points, wherein they have said ki aap dekho every registered person, HO is registered person, dusri branch is registered person there. So if you see from eyes of law or GST's eyes, they are two different registrations, two different persons. Then how you can say when you're sitting in head office and doing something which is benefiting, why you're saying it is not a supply?
And in fact,
why not?
Beneficial to do this because what happens is HO typically may not have any outputs.
Yeah.
So the trade will get accumulated in HO, so it makes sense to.
No, that was one more plea of the party, which even we feel that why not ISD rule? Why not ISD rule? But the problem they have also specified in a particular para, wherein they say that, see, there is a difference between ISD and cross charge. ISD में first of all, it is only with respect to service. Cost of goods आप कभी नहीं distribute कर पाओगे. First, cross charge में everything, all expenses incurred you will get. That is one thing. Second thing में ISD, why it is there? As he rightly told, accumulate हो गया है credit. I'm not providing anything. तो भाई accumulate करके क्यों रखते हो? Give it to branches, at least let them utilize. It's only for distribution of credit. I'm not providing anything. But in this particular, since we are talking about supply concept under GST, whatever I'm doing which is benefiting all my branches is actually a supply. So they have treated this transaction as a supply. That is why ISD will not help me here. Cross charge hai, it is a supply and it has to be included. So this concept according to me, is a newly brought this thing in this ruling. And obviously, as I was mentioning, GST में supply concept है. So they have treated as a.
Just two things. One is that you look at the example of an employee working in a firm, and what is that service for maybe the firm supply. So, so in that case, there's already a notification in service as well as my brother is in a firm, so I know that when he renders a supply from, he's a partner, so he makes a supply to a firm, that's exempt.
Correct.
So that's to clarify that any service by an employee to a firm is exempt. Secondly, talking about these supplies from the head office to the main company, because I think we have to bifurcate each and every transaction, because we spoke of the transaction, so centralized accounting. So that is something which is done from the head office without it. I don't think there's any consideration for that. But if you're talking about computer maintenance and staff training, I think in that cases, if you're training their staff, so there's another judgment in income tax or Morgan Stanley, if you're aware, where there were certain people sent as deputations to another firm and they charge money and there was some transfer pricing adjustment. So I think in centralized accounting and auditing, there shouldn't be any supply, but in computer maintenance, staff training, I think these are all supplies, because it's not simply just doing some centralized accounting or auditing. You're actually doing some service. You know, there's a service element involved.
No, going by your logic, if you go to see whatever I'm doing, let it be centralized accounting, let it be whatever word you use. Yeah. So whatever you are doing. Is it not a service by an employee to an employer, as you mentioned about the firm? Is it not that? Kuch bhi karo. Okay, you're saying centralized accounting, I'm sitting here and doing everything. Is it not a service by an employee to an employer, according to you?
I would think not, because these are firstly two distinct entities, and a partner in a firm is something distinct than a head office transacting with another registered office, according to me. Because if a partner in a firm is someone,
I think partner in a firm and rendering to partnership firm may not be covered in this, because here they are talking about a head office and their branches. So I think partner and partnership firm may be on a different footing altogether.
Exactly.
So I think that may not apply in this case.
Yeah.
And as far as the aspects are concerned, the Columbia judgment, you can just, because what actually they were doing, according to me, those things are also there. 1 second. I'll tell you the plan. 1 second.
Unfortunately, in Colombia, they were having these accounting entries to
Yes.
That's some of the companies don't do this.
Don't have. I'll just tell the para wherein they have mentioned what exactly they were doing.
The nature of service of a partner is entirely different from a head office.
Para 17, if you can just. Para 17, wherein we'll get what exactly they were doing. Para 17, you can just make a little big here. It's okay, or should we?
No, this is fine.
See, head office or their India management officer, but it is just head office, handles certain operations such as accounting, administrative work and maintenance. इसलिए computer जो हमने लिया है, computer. In respect of all units in India, the IMO is a part of registered person in Karnataka. IMO incurs certain expenditure in course of its operation, which includes rent paid, other equipment, travel expense, consultancy, communication, etc. Since these operations are for benefit of all the 11 units of the company in India, the expenses incurred in operating the IMO are allocated to other registered units for the purpose of determining the profit of each cost center. The allocation of cost to each of the registered units in India is based on the turnover of the respective unit. On such allocated cost, the appellant is raising a tax invoice on other registered units and paying GST on such allocated cost. For some part, they are paying, but here basically the question was just salaries here. However, the appellant is not allocating the cost of employees at the IMO to their units, since, in their understanding, this service is rendered by employee to employer, I was mentioning, in the course of or in relation to his employment, which is specifically there under Schedule 3 Entry 1, that is neither a supply of goods, neither a supply of service. So they had that understanding, wherein they have distinguished in para 18, wherein they say that no, employee-employer relationship is only between the head office and me when I'm sitting in head office and doing, not the other branch. That other branch or mera employee-employer relationship nahi hai. And that was the reason. And as far as his ISD and that also very nicely they have para 30. You can just go.
So the employer-employer relationship between the head office and the company, but not the other branches.
Which logically is not correct. I'm
He
just
is
trying to
employee
say.
of the company and not
That's
head
why at the initial stage I mentioned, I went for an interview. They said they will never say head office has employed you. They will say XYZ company has employed you. Even when you're walking or you go to your friends, and if anybody asks, I'm working, do you say I'm working in head office? I'll say I'm working in this company.
I'm working with Reliance.
Ah, Reliance. You never say I'm working with head office. So that is, I mean, I don't know. That is a judgment. Then if you can see 30 May. I think we should not put a niche. Just up, just below that. Up. I'm just reading the last line. In terms of section 16(1) of the CGST Act, niche jaiye Viraj. Every registered person shall be entitled to take credit of input tax charged on any supply of goods or services or both to him, which are used or intended to be used in the course or furtherance of his business. Registered person in this section refers to the person registered under section 25 and not to the legal entity. ये जो plea है हमारा कि XYZ company है, no, registered person is that head of it will have a separate risk. That's why. Therefore, the ITC of GST paid on receipt of services or goods from a third party by MIO can be availed by MIO. Means if head office is receiving some services for their purpose, they can take that. But some common services are there. Whether they will be entitled to ITC of that going by 16(1) is their point. And then that's why if common services, that's why that plea of ISD, which we were mentioning, if there are certain services commonly used by all distinct persons, then the ITC can be distributed to all units by ISD route. Yes, there is a fundamental difference between concept of ISD and that of cross charge. In ISD concept, only ITC on input services which are attributable to other distinct entities are distributable. However, in a cross charge mechanism, all expenses incurred by a distinct person for the purpose of carrying out activities, the outcome of which benefits other distinct person, is required to be cross-charged. Cross-charging of expenses may or may not involve ITC. ITC ka sawal nahi, and relates to both goods as well as services. In case of cross-charge, there is an element of service rendered by the person who cross-charges his other units, even though they belong to the same legal entity. On the other hand, in case of ISD, there is no element of service. HO kuch service nahi de raha hai. They are only for distribution of the credit, but a mere distribution of credit. Further, certain expenses like so and so incurred in maintaining and operating the IMO will not be distributable under the ISD route. Rather, they are required to be allocated, which HO ke liye hai. HO ke maintenance ke liye hai, which is only pertaining to HO. This is not a common service. So that in ISD route he will not be able to distribute. But cross charge karke he can recover. That is what they are saying. Because cross charge mein there is no concept. You are just allocating, is to ascertain the profitability of that particular unit. So I think although, see, this ruling is there, they have considered all the aspects, ISD, cross charge, and ultimately they have come to a conclusion, whatever, rightly or wrongly, it's an advanced ruling. It has been challenged also, but in Karnataka High Court, it's still, there is no outcome out of. But in my personal there are two things I feel. One is this aspect of, distinct person under section 25(4), which we were saying that, distinct person hai and all that is for the purpose of GST. Only for purpose of GST.
Just be separately registered.
So ye jo hai, see, you have to think from practical point of view. No company, big companies especially, it's a very common thing to do. Like I'm allocating cross charge mein kar rahi hu. Just because of GST ke angle se you are saying distinct person, you are not employee of him. In my personal distinct, that should not be the correct view. Because every person will be doing, every business to know the profitability of each center, they will be following this method. So it's an accounting thing that I'm cross-charging something, but don't put me in that bracket that I'm not an employee of that, because the precise purpose of putting that employee-employment relationship in Schedule 3(1) to say that it is not supply of goods or service is not being served. That purpose is not served if you are taking such kind of with due respect, such a humble interpretation. Humble, or you can say, very restricted kind of a narrow kind of a interpretation. That is my, of course, but this ruling is there as of now, and it is a supply.
So, but the whole ruling is that supply from the head office to the company
Yes.
is from employer.
Employer. That is what we are. The plea of the party was there, but that has not been accepted by the advanced ruling authority.
One question never been asked: why do we always say HO provides services to branch, and why not the reverse?
Because it's always that HO is doing some work, auditing.
The branch is doing everything for
the HO.
It doesn't have a revenue. Otherwise. So all the branches typically will have a revenue because the customer is affected. The end state is the branches. So branches get the revenue. Therefore, obviously, the branches cannot be providing services to HUL the revenue. That's the supply from branches. What it needs is all these, for example, corporate people who are in the corporate, they don't do the work, they support the branches.
Just a small point which I am trying to make. When we say head office is providing services, but can we take another argument? Whatever the cost incurred by the head office, it's getting billed in my administrative cost of goods sold. So the cost is already incurred and I'm paying output GST on that part. So there is no another part to pay the GST on this value and a service.
I have not got your point.
So what he is arguing is that ultimately that cost, whatever HO is incurring cost, that is embedded in supply of the branches somewhere. So GST
it is included already. So
collected.
GST has been paid.
It is included. But what about when you talk about from one location to another location?
From HO to branch.
Even in case of that, branch transfer is happening, or ultimately when I see the back cost of goods sold, I include all administrative overhead in that. So when ultimately I'm paying a GST on that part, so why should I need again a part costing as an addition part?
So there are 30 states now in India, so everyone is fighting for this.
Everyone will have a.
In fact, in all of these cases, the example what sir gave, that proviso to Rule 28 is useful. Whatever value you want to charge, you can do.
Problem value you want to charge is included.
Why not? That's what I'm saying. All these cases, what the clients did is best is up kuch value reasonable charge karo.
Problem here was these are hospitals. These are exempted.
Yeah.
So then all
Those
of
are
these
where questions come.
Yeah.
Next.
Next.
Yeah. Payment is delayed, whether I can notional interest on that. Whether it can be included.
So it is notional interest or actually charged?
If 18% is there, we have to see whether actual charge or notional.
Okay.
in fact, it will be actual only because this time of supply also says when you receive that time only you need to pay. So if it's never received, there is no obligation to pay.
So I would read it as it's a notional, but the liability will trigger only when you received it. It will arise as soon as you are payable.
Yes. And one more part here, exceptionally under section 15(2)(d), there is a specific mention of inclusion of such kind of an interest on delayed payment. So that is one more riding effect. Because as far as service tax is concerned, under that valuation rules, there was a specific exclusion in Rule 6 of determination of value rules in service tax, wherein they said delayed payment ka interest hai, so it is not included. But here by 15(2)(d) now, and it says interest for delayed payment for any consideration of any supply. So this widened enough. So it has to be included.
Just one connecting question. What if I am giving a discount? If I make a payment within a month, I am giving you a 5% cash discount. Can I reduce the value?
Credit note?
Yeah, the same thing is I have mentioned on my invoice. If you make a payment within a 30 days, I will give you a 5% discount.
Yeah.
So that is possible, I think. There should not be a problem in that.
553.
Discount specific, they have said if you are giving before, if it is shown separately before the time of supply. And if it is post supply, then by agreement, you can correlate by the invoices if you can correlate. And obviously the recipient has reversed the ITC.
Happens if interest becomes due because it is not paid within that period of time.
Period of time.
But after 6 months, you say you don't pay the interest. would I be required to pay GST on the happening of the event that he has not?
Actual interest.
In fact, sir, time of supply says only when you receive
the payment. So if you don't receive, according to me, it will not be. Open it if it is not mentioned.
For example, MSME does not pay money. For the provision of accounts, interest is provided. GST also levied on.
You're going to proviso, that's section 16. If it is not paid within 180 days, then it needs to be added back to the output. That's what.
MSME. MSME you need to mandatorily pay within the time frame. If not paid, the companies have to provide for an interest because I didn't pay to them.
Acha.
So,
if it fits into that interest for delayed payment of consideration, if you fit into that, then definitely yes, it has to be included. Because the wordings are very clear according to me in 15.2, wherein it says that interest on delayed payment of consideration. And for any supply, any consideration. So they have widened it by saying, so according to me, if it is fitting in that, it's for delayed payment of consideration, it has to be included. Going by 15.2. Yeah. Yes. In fact, here there is one more aspect. See, you are obligated to pay to me within a stipulated period of time. Okay. See, if you ask me as it is interest, okay, 15.2D is there. But just for a moment, just for debate purpose, whether it's a supply, independent, whether it's a supply, interest for delayed payment of, okay, you will say consideration ke relation, all that I agree. But if you go to section 7 and tell me whether it's, because now the question comes, agreeing to obligation, schedule 2, agreeing to obligation to refrain, to tolerate an act or situation, or to do an act. You are obligated, because I had mentioned in my invoice, to pay to me within a certain period of time. You are obligated. I am tolerating your act of non-payment within that time period. That is why I am asking you to pay interest. So it's a supply going by that schedule 2 wherein specifically. Why not fit into that? According to me, it will, because I am tolerating your act.
You are charging with a 30 days credit period and there is a delay period. Suppose the time is 100 rupees and 30 days period of time is given. After 50 days, the payment is not received. So 18% or 100 will be charged for the next 20 days. And then you issue a debit note on the 31st day, suppose, right? And then
not on 31st day. Not 51st day. 51st day.
Yes.
Okay, when the money is received, you issue the debit note. Okay. And so I got it. So then the next point is that will it make any difference on the system of accounting, cash or accrual? Because in accrual, you're actually estimating how much you receive, and when a debit note is issued, it's issued after the period, right? So in that case, how do you fit the two systems? If you're calling cash and accrual, you won't make a difference. No, you won't make a difference.
Receipt basis पे अगर आप कर रहे हैं
Okay.
That way.
It won't make difference.
No, but if you are on mercantile basis, what you say is correct. Unless you carve out the exception and mention it, but legally, unless the date of signing of the balance sheet, if anything is due, you must provide.
You have to provide for that. You have to mention that.
I just want to share experience on this MSME.
Yes.
So what happens is when large companies buy goods from MSMEs, those large companies, in order to leverage on the working capital, they often delay payment to MSMEs. So under the MSME Act, there is a necessity to provide for interest in the books of the purchaser. Now, there is no, so as to say, force in the MSME law that the interest has to be paid. Okay. The interest has to be paid only if it is claimed by the supplier. So what will large buyers do? They provide for the interest liability in their books. 3 years, they continue with the interest liability, and the 4th year, the interest is reversed.
No, just to add, law limitation does not apply to them.
Actually, practically what?
But it is not applicable.
Actually, practically what is happening?
Correct, but law limitation act does not.
So once this reversal happens, then obviously the interest which is booked as an expense in year 1 becomes an income in year 4. Now TDS is not deducted when the interest provision is made. And now the TDS department is after the company, is after the purchaser. Why TDS is not deducted from the interest? There is a litigation which is underway under income tax for the TDS. But for GST, your opinion is one has there has to be GST.
Going by the going by the provision.
On receipt basis, but.
Yes.
I think 194 TDS would be only in case of loan, not otherwise.
Oh, sir. So there is an issue over there. We can separately discuss.
I didn't say additional interest after the debit for the issue when you receive the amount.
Then the actual. If it's actual, then you can.
Why it's considered?
So there is a possibility 20 days in your example, 20 days interest may not be paid, only 10 days might.
Okay.
Then there can be a dispute.
Practically.
So 10 days interest to say the balance is not paid, so then that notional interest
Correct.
for 10
Will be
days.
considered.
You are not supposed to pay because you never receive. The time
Yes.
the interest portion is
Time of-
chargeable.
So no
Tax
consideration,
only
no
when you receive.
consideration.
Right.
You have not received that. We'll move to next.
Yes.
So the notional interest is included, you're saying?
Ideally, you would be liable.
You would be liable.
Yeah.
It's including the taxable value.
Correct. But the trigger of payment arises
Only when you receive it.
If you have not received, there is no trigger to pay that.
On the 51st day, sir, I have raised the debit note for 20 days interest. On the 61st day, I got the 10 days interest. The rest 10 days I've never got it. So just have to pay the GST on the 10 days interest that I got on the 61st day. The rest of the 10 days which I've never got received, I will never have to pay the tax. Because the point of taxation doesn't arise.
Okay, that's
Madam.
That's legally speaking. Yes.
Yeah.
Time of supply.
Yes,
Time
Manish.
of paying.
Yes,
Animal
see the thing that we are trying to say that interest is paid because I have violated a condition of the contract. It is not paid to me as a consideration towards supply. Because I violated a condition of a contract that he is supposed to pay me within X period. So thereafter, whatever he is paying me, that is for delaying using my funds. And even in case of banks and all, it is specifically said that interest is an exempt supply. Someone
as
will
far
do
as
the
interest-
hardcore business of funding. Yeah, no. So here also, after I have sold, and if you do not pay beyond 30 days, then I have indirectly become your financer.
That is when it becomes taxable. Right? That's right.
Yes, I am funding you for that. Secondly, in interest, we are discussing interest नहीं मिलेगा, जितना मिलेगा उस दिन पे उसको tax लगेगा. What happens to my original money, which I raise an invoice and I never receive? This law doesn't provide for reversal of what you call tax paid on my accrual itself. In my view, in such a case, after say 1 year, if 18 months I am allowed, no, 18 months में पैसा नहीं आता है, तो मेरे को reverse करना है, मैं reverse नहीं कर पाता हूँ because I am not, the goods return doesn't happen if that person doesn't come. So, even though it is bad debt, I have to pay GST without receipt of consideration, which is a basic requirement.
Yeah. So he's talking about the main supplies consideration, which is never received.
Okay,
But I
not
have
on the
paid
interest
GST.
part. Okay.
So other person is actually reversed after 180 days because he has not paid me. But I can never actually reverse it.
Yes, it was already. Move further or anything?
Yeah.
Here we are on interest on advances. Earlier we were discussing on delayed payment. If it's interest on advances, what would be the payout?
No provision to tax instrument.
Correct. Because 15(2)(d) talks about, as we were mentioning, interest for delayed payment of consideration. But as far as interest on advances is concerned, first of all, if it's with respect to goods, then 66 of 2017 specific notification says that advance agar goods ka hai, then my liability will be only at the time of supply, not when I receive the advance. So goods hai, to advance is only not exempt, so interest ka sawal nahi hai. Then one more thing what I had in mind, 12 of 2017 serial number 27, which talks about interest on loans. The word uses advances, but actually it is referring to banks, financial institutions. So as a, just as a, if you can just imagine whether you can try to fit in that serial number 27 and say that chalo ye service hai, assuming it's not goods. But if you read that serial number 27, services by way of extending deposits, loans, or advances. Insofar as the consideration is represented by way of interest or discount other than interest involved in credit card services, which is exempt. 12 of 17 exempt service may is taken. Now, normally, if you see this, it means extending deposits, loans, or advances. Actually, truly speaking, it is actually referring to the banks or financial institutions who interest hai to it will not be liable. So that logic, I had just put that to put in this thing. This will not come to our rescue in this case. So that's why, first of all, advance pay, there is no this thing. And specific inclusion for interest on advances is also not mentioned as we were talking about interest for delayed payment of consideration. So the question here is whether still can department tell us that since the interest on advances hai, whether we can still, they can say that nahi, you included, because ultimately it is for supply. See, I'm taking advance from you, and later on I'll adjust at the time of final jo price deni hai, utna less you're going to give me. So whether department can take a stand, अरे वो तो related है ना उससे, आपकी valuation जो है, so notional interest आप ले लो and you add. In a case where there is no specific provision for inclusion of interest on advances, what's the point of concern here? What point there we can take to say the department you're wrong because it is not included, it is not providing for any inclusion anywhere. Because earlier in GST, I mean in central excise or service tax, the concept was whether it has influenced my price. By taking that advance, whether it has influenced my price. That 100 I'm giving to anybody else, say 100. But if you give me advance mein de rahe aap, then I'll say okay, nahi 100 nahi, aapko 80. So it is influencing my price. Only in that case it was included. But there is no such specific wordings anywhere in GST law. Neither interest on advance is specifically mentioned to be included. So whether that logic can be said to say that my price, I'll show you my price is not influenced. I'm charging to him also that much only and him also that much. So it has not been influenced. So please don't ask me. Or I directly take a stand. Nowhere it is mentioned in GST Act for inclusion. So under what provision are you asking me to?
Section
add
51. You will have to demonstrate.
Price is the sole consideration. Again, we are going to price is sole consideration. So same thing, whether it has influenced my price. So this can be an area of litigation wherein it will be very difficult for both sides to prove in a case where there is no specific mention of includability of interest on advances like they have done for interest for delayed payment of consideration.
No, see, advance receipt may be on a different consideration also. You may be a customer whom I do not trust financially. And I will say I will supply only if you give me in advance.
Advance, yes.
So how come, means you presume that it affects my only pricing? That's why I'm considering.
That's what I need to show. I need to show.
No, fine. So, no, I'm just trying to bring a point that you were saying that the consideration for advance is not merely a receipt of money. It is to ensure that I want to do business with you, but I'm not comfortable giving credits. That's why I'm asking advance payment. China ऐसे ही तो कर रहा है.
Yeah.
Because there are few cases where, so you're talking about advances are interest free, but whether notional interest can be applicable.
First of all, whether interest.
There are judgments of Supreme Court that say that what is interest? Just to clarify that, interest is something which you withheld for on account of
basically
something belonging to them which you are withheld.
Basically, interest is time value of money. Basically, as a common man, it is a time value of money. But here, what we are discussing is when I'm receiving that advance, now I'm talking against. See, advance actually I'm receiving for my final price. Yeah. No, it's not a question of illegally. It's not a question of illegally. See, 100 rupees is my price. I tell you, आप मुझे 50 rupees advance में दे दो, balance 50 you can give at a time of finance. So,
Ma'am, you
is
will
it
have
really
to.
influencing?
I think we have to look at the definition of supply, section 7, and section 7(1)(a) is the governing section, because the law, any law for that matter, wants to tax a commercial transaction carried out in the course and furtherance of business.
Yes.
So now if that be so, this advance pay interest जो किसी को मिला गया कुछ मालूम नहीं है, वो कहाँ से मैं टैक्स करने लगूंगा? Where you will fit this part into the transaction? That's something they deemed that okay, for delayed payment I will charge it.
Both of you are talking. Yes, please.
How can this qualify as interest item? Because this is something which is anyway owed to you. It's not something like you are depositing in the bank and they are paying you something back. This is something which you are anyway entitled to. So there is a question of you paying any notional interest. Not paying, charging notional.
If you want to include
notional interest, this is not something which you are.
But if it is impacting your cost or price, then
interest out of this.
So even if it is impacting my price, still that is the price.
That is the price of the commodity which
if you pay me after 3 months, price is 100, and if you pay me advance today, then price is 80, and I will supply you after 3 months only.
So that's the hard reality today for litigation. Let's say an unknown client walks into my office. I quote him that for starting my services, you need to pay me 25%, 20% token as advance. My price remains the same.
If your price remains the same, then
there is no question.
My price remains the same.
That's
not influencing. I'm just taking
then there is no
for my
question.
security or maybe for towards mobilization of resources or something of that sort. I may not have that funds. I want to secure my financial interest, something of that sort. The advance may not exactly be towards discounting the price itself.
Yes.
That's what I need to demonstrate. Once I demonstrate that the price has remained same, then there is no question. And first of all, interest on advance, this concept is not there for includability anywhere in the GST law. The reason for putting this was since it was there in the pre-GST era. Whether now department can take that, borrow that reasoning and say that you show me whether price has been influenced. Aap nahi dikha sakte, and they will doubt always.
Simple definition of interest. That is, suppose you deposit a bank, for example, then the bank is to repeat that money. Or if the department has extra TDS or something, they will issue a refund along with interest under 244A for that amount which is withheld by them for a particular period of time. But this is an amount, strictly speaking, by the example in which you are entitled to, you are getting that amount and he has to pay you a further amount on that same commodity. So there is nothing like you have to repay that amount back. So there is no question of interest over here. This is not interest according.
See, advance means, as we were mentioning, we have taken this from a point of view like I have kept as a security deposit. Suppose later on you don't pay me, or there is some default in payment of the finance. So many bulan that way. From that angle, it has been taken. But all the way the wordings used everywhere were interest on advances, which many disputes were there under the central excise and service tax, wherein everywhere this reasoning was taken that you have to show me that price. And the reason for taking this is here in GST, maybe the department can take support of 15(1) to say that price is sole consideration. Just to take, although they'll say, okay, आप बोलेंगे 15(2) में नहीं है, तो आप कहाँ से बोल रहे हैं? So इधर है ही नहीं includability के लिए. That will be this thing, our stand, party stand. But department tomorrow may say, price is sole consideration. आपके केस में नहीं है वो.
Where is the other consideration? That is what we have to demonstrate.
That is what we have to.
If it's not so considered, where is the second consideration?
Whether I'm getting anything.
Something in kind. Show me something else that sort.
So that's why it will be a the reason for taking such kind of case, because it will be a very debatable issue between the parties and the department to demonstrate. Wherein the department will try to take support of any statutory provision, and we have to show that no, it's not fitting over there. And please don't take reasoning of the earlier this thing if it is not mentioned in the GST Act.
So coming to that Keva's point.
Yes.
Let us say if this premises is available on rent, If you pay me 50 lakh rupees deposit, rent will be 50,000 per month. If you pay me 10 lakh rupees deposit, rent will be 75,000 per month.
There will be a problem.
So price is not a sole consideration.
Then you are out, because once price is not a sole consideration, then it will be a dicey situation wherein you have to prove that nahi, fit
open market value.
open market. Then you go to valuation rules. वहाँ पे किधर fit हो रहा है, open market value you will have to resolve. Yes.
In an alternative case, from the case that we just try to extend that, if the advance which is given is exceeding the value of supply and whatever the excess balance is remaining is returned back to the client, in that case, what would happen? Will there be any impact on the?
Yeah, then I think that would qualify as interest because you're
retaining
something which is an excess of
which you are not supposed to.
Exactly. That can be counted.
Does it happen in here?
Again, I don't think so, sir. That will again come into play because that way have been just been estimate.
I estimated itna hai and then
Estimate किया था.
But then excess हो गया.
Excess आ गया funds. I've literally done.
But then we're talking about whether it's interest or not. We're just
only on interest. But practically, whether it is
the intent was not to affect the price. That is what you have to demonstrate. The intent of taking the advance was not to affect the price itself.
Ultimately, the government or the legislature, while making any laws, is only on the point that if you're recovering something, which is falling in that ambit of supply and my ambit of section 15 and my ambit of valuation rules, you have to pay GST on that. Only the wordings may be alag-alag hai. But whether it is falling, that's why everywhere we are stressing price is sole consideration, price is sole consideration.
Under civil law, if he's paid extra under civil law, then the person who's retaining the excess has to pay interest under the civil law. So we are talking about interest in that situation where he has to pay the GST might be there. And that's why.
Even if that's the how GST come into play, because he's paying the interest, he has got some advances exempted. Then in that case, say number 27.
Civil law, he has to pay the interest.
If it is on bank loan, because that's what exemption is also there as far as interest when you're receiving loans on advances. The 27 serial number we saw. Yeah. There also whether you are going to be covered under that.
He pays that with GST on the interest account.
No, whether he is liable first. First of all, for interest there is no, and whether he is liable to pay. Whether he is liable to pay is a. Move to next.
Yes, the last, most awaited one.
Yeah.
So we should have taken it first, I think. Then we would have never reached till the end. Okay. So I think I need not explain here.
I think more or less the query over here from all the participants would be there. That practically in Mumbai or in the state of Maharashtra, you never question the value of land separately in the agreement. Still can take benefit of the judgment.
According to me, according to this judgment or my interpretation of the Gujarat High Court judgment is, if separate value is ascertainable for land, then please take that value. Don't go to paragraph 2A because they have struck down. Very nicely the words used for a judgment for me. Struck down to the effect that mandatory 1/3 reduction has been given. When separate value is available, and the reasoning also is very nicely given. What the Gujarat High Court says, please go to section 15 for valuation. What it says, price actually paid or payable is the transaction value. So when I'm having that actual value, why are you putting me for reduction of 1/3? So the first very clear ratio is, agar aapke paas actual value hai, please take that. That's why that mandatory thing of 1/3 reduction, they have struck down to that extent. But at the same time, either मेरे पास actual value है, yeah, I can arrive at that value going by valuation rules, because one of their line in the observation says either actual value is ascertainable or going by the provisions valuation rules I can ascertain. Then please don't go to paragraph. But at the same time, now controversial part. If I don't have the value, whether it's mandatory to go for 1/3, अगर मेरा ज़्यादा है, I don't have the actual value, but मेरा actual, if you go to see 1/3 से ज़्यादा है, so can you push me down and say High Court says आप 1/3 ही ले लो? One thing, because the wordings used are mandatory aspect has been struck down. It means that, and they also use the word option. It is at the option. So that according to me, that mandatory aspect which was there in paragraph 2, you know, that effect of that has been minimized, I should say. Not even reduced, it has been minimized. But at the same time, see, in construction industry, normally when there are rights given, like I own a land and give you the land, transfer of development rights, and you are going to construct. So what happened is there is a notification which says that on what value you will. Now what happens is, as far as land is concerned, there is no tax on land. And for that purpose, in Schedule 3, there are 3 schedules to CGST Act. First schedule talks about it will be a supply, deemed supply, even if there is no consideration. 2 says what is the supply of goods, what is the supply of service. And 3 says it is neither supply of goods, neither supply of service. Wherein at serial number 5 of Schedule 3 specifically it is mentioned sale of land except for 5E in Schedule 2. That is construction activity. So in short, our concept before going to the judgment is that जो construction activity है, before issue of CC, completion certificate, yeah, except in a case where I am receiving entire amount after CC, then it's a sale because CC आ गया, it's a sale, so your service element is not there. But when I'm giving you एक developer को देती हूँ, I'm also giving the land and for the construction. So whatever that value of land is there, you cannot tax on that because land पे tax है ही नहीं. So what they did, it was very difficult. In fact, what happened is initially the reason for coming to this initially, which they have explained in the case also, there was this indivisible works contract. When it is indivisible, you cannot buy for it. First of all, what is works contract? Goods bhi ja rahe, provision of goods and service together. Okay, so it's a works contract. So question was whether state will have the power to bifurcate that thoda sale hai and whether they can levy. Whether they can do that. That was a question. Then and then Gannon Durkali case came wherein they said no, it cannot be bifurcated. Then they brought Article 29A in the Constitution itself, wherein they said that provision of services in providing provision of goods and services, yes. State has this thing, it will be considered sale. Chalo, laga diya. Then next question came, value kya hai? That's why, why this value. So value kya hai? Then they said no, you can indivisible ho sakta hai. Value can be determined. So what will be the value? वहाँ से चल रहा है that this issue value क्या consider करना है वो तभी से चल रहा है. So it is not something new. Yes, नहीं, value of the land can be excluded. Everybody knows. कितना? How much?
You dictate what is the value of land.
That can I? So this notification under GST very cleverly. In fact, it was there in the service tax also. I am not saying, but it said that particular paragraph in that notification, 1/3 of the agreement का जो भी value है, 1/3 will be considered as towards land, and you can deduct that. Notification said. Now, what happened in this case, in this particular case, is that there were 2 different values available. Land का इतना, आपका construction activity का इतना. So separate values were available. So question was that when I have a separate value of land, why am I governed by that paragraph कि 1/3 ही के करो? That is one thing. Second thing, different plots of land, different localities. So why 1/3 only? That is one thing. Second thing, it goes back to the concept of TDR, जो transfer of development rights जो concept था. The reason why it was brought is ये जो cities है wherein there is a lot of congestion है. So government wanted to private parties से लेके to try to decongest this. We can use. That was the concept behind TDR. But now with the developing laws, it has become a huge thing कि land का जो value है 1/3 आप मुझे क्यों दे? Like suppose if my cost of land is more than 1/3, but then I'm losing na, because you are telling me only deduction of 1/3. फिर जो excess है 1/3 का, which actually is my value of land, you are taxing on that. You are going against your own principle that land is not taxable. फिर आप कैसे लगा रहे? हाँ, तो why आप मुझे 1/3 क्यों ला रहे? What is the reasoning of that 1/3? So that basically that 1/3 thing was challenged in the Gujarat High Court. When Gujarat High Court now heavily has come down, that ये जो 1/3 है, mandatory 1/3 जो है, that is minimized. वो mandatory नहीं है. But problem here is while interpreting the judgment is that if suppose my value of land is more than 1/3, I have the value, then it will be beneficial for me because अभी तक तो आप मुझे 1/3 ही दे रहे थे. But if my more, तो more I will reduce to that extent. But my point is suppose मेरा कम है, suppose, तो whether I can take benefit of this judgment and say मुझे 1/3 ही मिलना चाहिए. There is the catch. ज़्यादा है तो I'm benefited, I'm happy. But मेरा अगर कम है, whether tomorrow department can say you have taken disadvantage, unjustly enriched by the ratio of this judgment. But to that my answer is वो नहीं बोल रहे ना ऐसा. Judgment is silent on this part. They have not taken. Why they didn't took? very rightly so, because that was not an issue before them. उनका simple logic है, मेरे पास दोनों values है, मैं दोनों values लूंगी. Go to section 15, price actually paid or payable. It is there with me. Why you are telling me in 1/3? So that's why, to answer your question, whether this will apply in a case where I don't have two bifurcated amounts, in my opinion, this judgment may not help, because I think they are very clear on that. So I think that paras, I'll just tell you, because since we have discussed so much, at least that paras, if we can see, so I think it will be more clear.
Like they say, the valuation rules will take care of that.
No, that again, what happened is, department's one point there was that, nahi, since you are giving this as an open jacket formula, party तो कुछ भी लेगी, कुछ भी value ले सकती है, कुछ भी कर सकती. There they are saying that no, it can't happen. If department, suppose assuming a case, I take some value, it is not 1/3. Department is doubting my value. तो क्या? That their high court is saying that क्यों? You are not revenue-less. Go to valuation rules. वो लगाओ, rule 30 लगाओ, आपको क्या लगाना है लगाओ. We are not saying anything on that. So that they have answered.
But in the context where you are unjustly enhancing the value of land rather than what it should be. If your flat is like 20,000 per square feet and the construction cost is 3,000 and the profit is 300 to be on that, instead of putting 26,700 as 16,700 value of land, you're putting 19,000 and undervaluing a construction service. In that context, you are not remedialess. Correct.
Because department will always ask, na, आप कैसे ले रहे हो?
So depending on how much you adjust your sales price, that is the amount of the attributable to the value of the land.
Miraj, para 4.1. We'll just see the facts, because since we are so much into it, what exactly was and why there was a separate value. Yeah. See, the writ applicant is a practicing advocate. The writ applicant enters into an agreement with Navratna organizers and developers for purchase of a plot of land and measuring so and so, located in so and so. Said agreement also encompasses construction of bungalow on the said plot of land by so and so. Means both ways. मैं land भी दे रही हूँ and you have to construct a bungalow. It appears that separate and distinct consideration was agreed upon between the parties to the agreement for sale of land and construction of a bungalow in the land. So these are the facts. That's why I was stressing कि अगर दो values है, they have. So when you see the Gujarat High Court judgment, you should always go under this background or this in your mind कि there are two separate values available. Then why one? Conclusion.
Secondly, interestingly, see what is happening is sale of land is exempt.
Yes.
Okay. So when builder is selling me some this after construction the bungalow, so there is a land sale also which is happening along with bungalow. When he will suppose he bought a plot of land and along with that plot of land he constructed bungalow and sold the bungalow along with that land rights to me. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So their sale consideration includes profit. Okay, which is partly towards construction costs and partly towards the profit he will incidentally make on even resale of land, which is a not a supply. What happens to
that's
that?
what I was saying. Because indirectly they are trying to tax land. Because in fact, if you see, now specifically if you see even our definition, it does not include immovable property. Now, if you see immovable property, although it is not defined in GST anywhere, if you see in other laws or RERA for them, it says immovable property means land and benefits and next to that land. So once I'm giving you transfer of development right, is it not a benefit arising out of that land? So once you say land ही tax नहीं है. In fact, because TDR there is a specific entry wherein promoter is made liable under RCM. That also, according to me, it is valid because see, transfer of development right ultimate किस चीज का? Land का. So the benefit arising of land on that you are taxing by bringing a specific entry wherein promoter is made liable to pay. So there also, actually, it is very difficult to bifurcate and say कि land नहीं है. I'm talking about TDR. Whether it's correct to even bifurcate that. That is also a point because ultimately transfer of what? About the land only. Na?
Remove the development right, there's no value to the land.
Correct. That is the reason. That is the reason.
Development potential is the value of the land, nothing else.
So that is okay. Anyways, थोड़ा उनका ये है. Just नहीं. Before that conclusion part, they have discussed a little. Just before. नहीं, just before. See, this is what we were talking. What if the supplier artificially inflates the price of land, thereby deflating the value of construction service? This is what we were talking. One of the contentions of the learned ASG while defending the impugn notification is that valuation cannot be determined on the basis of value fixed into the agreement, which is decided inter se between the parties, as the parties may artificially fix a higher value of land. That's what we were discussing. So as to reduce the tax liability under GST Act. It was also raised. The aforesaid contention is also required to be rejected. At the outset in the present case, the values as mentioned in the agreement are not challenged in the affidavit in reply. First, department has not challenged what I was saying. If department is doubting, then the question. But in case mein department is not challenged कि आप जो value ले रहे हो वो गलत है सही है. Open on merits, because whenever this writ is filed, there is a provision for giving to the opponent, that's the government or the department, especially in writs ASG, wherein they will file an affidavit and reply to whatever contentions the writ applicant has made. Wherein each para-wise they will go on countering. Para this says this, but we are not agreeing. Para. So in this, as far as the valuation aspect is concerned, department had not challenged. This is one more drawback as far as this judgment is concerned. That's why I was saying if department doubts, then you'll have to prove. You cannot take support of this judgment. And thereby they are saying that the aforesaid contention is required to be rejected. At the outset in the present case, values mentioned in the agreement are not challenged in the affidavit in reply, means they are referring to the department's affidavit in reply. And therefore such contention is not applicable. We are supported in this regard by judgment of Supreme Court. Even otherwise, very nicely by the High Court. They could have very well stopped saying that isne challenge nahi kiya hai, we should not. But there's even otherwise the possibility of obtaining indirect consideration cannot be ruled out for any supply transaction. If in a given case it is found that the value of construction service which is declared by the supplier is not the correct value, in as much as other consideration has been indirectly received, then section 15(4) will apply, which reads as where value of supply of goods or services or both cannot be determined. Price is the sole consideration. Again, our basic funda. The same shall be determined in such manner as may be prescribed means valuation rules. Therefore, even in a case where value of supply of goods or services or both cannot be determined under subsection 1, then same can be determined in the prescribed manner. Prescribed manner means valuation rules. The valuation rules framed pursuant to section 15(4) are contained in rule 27 to 31. They have mentioned everything. 27 deals with this, 28, number 30 also, the 31 residual method also. Hence, valuation by adding 10% profit to the cost of production or manufacture or cost of acquisition of goods or cost of provision of service is a statutorily accepted method of valuation. Even if such cost-based valuation is not possible, then residual method is provided in rule 31, which also provides for using reasonable means consistent with the principles and general provisions of section 15, as well as valuation rules. Thus, the revenue is not remediless, even in a case where it doubts the correctness of the value assigned in the contract towards construction. If it is established that such value was not the sole consideration for the service, then resort can be had to the valuation rules and value can be derived by applying cost plus profit method or a reasonable value consistent with the principles and provisions of the statute. When such statutory mechanism for determination of value is available, then impugn deeming fiction cannot be justified on the basis that it is meant to curb avoidance of tax when in fact such fiction is leading to arbitrary consequences. They are aware it is leading to, but you cannot take just support of this and fix any value. And even if you do that, department is there, they have to resort to 15(1) and valuation. Yes. Yes.
The valuation as per the property.
Yes. Even if you go through the entire judgment, this is a very nicely written judgment, in fact, wherein they have considered all aspects, and I feel that even departments, doubt may, the mind has some doubts, it will become an open, but actually, according to me, it is not an open jacket formula. And again, I'm saying the same thing. Price hai, valuable, ascertainable hai. Please don't go to one. So that is why that also they have clearly covered. Same judgment, and they have cleared very clearly. They have mentioned.
Last thing on this, it's a Gujarat High Court. How far?
Whether it will apply to everybody. See, normally the jurisprudence or the juristic decisions or the formula which is followed in all the courses, unless there is a contrary High Court judgment, this High Court, of course, you may say that it's a High Court judgment. How you are asking me whether it will apply to some other state or something? Yes. Yes, it will apply because there is no contrary high court. Suppose tomorrow Bombay comes out with a judgment, Bombay High Court, which is contrary to this. Then if I am appearing in Bombay High Court, they will say that we are not bound by Gujarat High Court. Even otherwise, chalo, assuming I'm Bombay High Court has no such judgment. There is no contrary judgment. I cannot forcibly argue. Standing in Bombay High Court, already Gujarat High Court, I can take support. I will argue, I will take support with the provision. But they have every right to not agree with this or say that, ye point has not been considered. It's for inferior. So they cannot, you cannot say it's binding. Definitely in Gujarat, yes, it's a jurisdictional high court. But whether it will apply, and one more aspect to this is, sometimes, PAN based, like in GST, everywhere it is PAN based. Now suppose, this is a high court judgment, leave aside. Suppose there is an advance ruling. I am in Bombay, Maharashtra. I got a ruling in my favor. I have my own units in other states, which are obviously separately registered. Whether in that state, on the very same issue, in my own case, whether I can resort to and go there and say that already in that state, advance ruling is held in my favor. I am the applicant. Aap kya bolte, it applies to applicant. I am the applicant. Applicant is a person who comes and applies. Whether I can take support.
But you are not the applicant. The other registered person is the applicant.
Yes. There is a catch there because they will say that applicant means who. So there, that person is in the state. He is there. He is a registered person. You are not the registered person. So you are not the applicant. So this problem practically. Yes. Yes. It is not binding. See, but what happens now? I am talking from the SSC's point of view. मैं क्या बोलूँगी? Same issue, everything. Advance ruling मेरे को favor में दी. Just because my factory is not, I have one in Karnataka. आप महाराष्ट्र का क्यों नहीं apply कर रहे? And see, advance ruling is not giving something out of air. It is applying the provisions of law, interpreting provisions of law only, rightly or wrongly. What the department will say? अगर आपके against होता तो आप क्या करते? चलो, अगर against होता. आप क्या करते? मैं तो जाती नहीं अप्लाई करने दूसरे स्टेट में. Already मेरे को, and that time they will say it is binding. You have already approached advance ruling, same facts, everything same, and now you're not following that. How come? So what I would say, this is a practical difficulty which the SSC at this point of time is facing.
So that is very clear, right? That when there is a decision of a high court is binding throughout India. But that is the subject of a lot of debate. That judgment came out
debatable
years ago, and that is very debatable because there was a case where.
No, but tell me one thing: if a particular high court has given a judgment, and whether it is possible for another high court, two judges who are sitting, whether I can even argue or I can even force upon them and say that, "Arey, already high court ne sab consider karke diya." They'll say we are not bound. We are sitting in Bombay High Court. We are not bound. Only for that state. It is not Article 141, wherein Supreme Court is the law of the land. And we always say Supreme Court interprets the law as it is. Do we say Supreme Court ने आज decision दिया, तो ये आज से apply होगा? It is interpreting the law as it was, as it is. We cannot say whether I can say when I did this activity, Supreme Court थोड़ी था ना कभी. मुझे क्या मालूम है? I cannot. It will be very difficult to say because it is. And that time, what we say, Supreme Court is the law of the land. But High Court, whether that formula can be applied, in my personal opinion, unless there is a, I can argue, I will take support, I will mention, I will show them how, and it may appeal to them also, and they may follow also. But it is not binding upon. Like Supreme Court ke jaise, I cannot stand on that. Is.
The buyers of a central statute are challenged. That is
virus, yeah.
When the buyers of the central statute are challenged. And the and the High Court rules on the buyers, that will be applicable for it.
Yes.
Because they are talking in the context of a central statute.
Yes.
Naturally, when you're talking in the context of a state statute, that will be applicable for
state.
Yeah. But if you're talking in the High Court rules in the central statute, will that judgment be applicable throughout India?
Throughout India, unless
of the Supreme Court
says,
says that it will be applicable throughout India.
So on this point, I think we should refer to Para 124.
And secondly, I think there was some clarification.
They want to strike it down or they want to read it down.
It is read down to the effect. It is never struck down.
They are not struck down.
The parallel state is read down. That's what I was saying. Only the mandate portion has been.
Decided on the validity of the notification.
No, they are not. They are not saying it is ultra virus. They have nowhere used the word ultra virus. They are only saying struck down to the effect of mandatory only in a case where value आपके पास है.
Exactly what happened. You must be going for the intermediary services that are
Yeah.
So I had the pleasure of assisting the working additional solicitor general in the same case. That same judgment of Abhay Ahuja, he's written the same thing that there was another case where Ujjal Bhuya, the other companion judge, that said had given in the Guwahati High Court judgment where they did not struck down the bias. So it's Abhay Ahuja's judgment in Ravindra Jani, he says that in that case, which I only gave the judgment by the senior, and he said that only, that in that case it was not struck down. So that is a difference between.
That's a difference.
So it was held that was struck down. But in this case, which we are relying upon, it was not struck down, it was read down. Or it was not struck down, it was just let it be as it is. So in that case, the High Court judgment will not apply throughout India.
And read down to the effects. If you read their language, it's very clear. Read down to the effect of mandatory aspect of 1/3 in a case where actual value is available. Just a line. See, impugn so and so and parallel so and so is read down to the effect that deeming fiction of 1/3 will not be mandatory in nature. Full stop. It will only be available at the option of the taxable person in cases where actual value of land or undivided share of land is not ascertainable. So they are not giving a complete jacket and saying, "Ye ultra virus hai." Ultra virus means it is not in existence, void ab initio. It is not in existence at all. But yahan pe, that's why I was saying there are two things. Value is ascertainable, please go for that value. But agar value is not ascertainable, it is your option. I can take that 1/3. But again, my question remains that if actual value of land is less than 1/3, whether I can take advantage of this? Because वो लोग बोल रहे हैं mandatory in nature को हमने we have read down to that effect. So whether I can take even if the cost of land is.
Madam, if it is optional, then I can always avail. Law has given the option. And now that the Gujarat High Court very properly, correctly read it down, that where the value is higher and you can establish, then you are eligible to that. Otherwise, optionally, you can take this. So there is no doubt.
Yes, because
that's binding on the department.
No, and even if I have an actual value, which is actually working out to be more than 1/3, I can very well take that. They cannot take 1/3. That's what Gujarat High Court says. But
and
only in the case, my only case is
option at me, whatever benefit it seems beneficial to me,
you can take.
And on that other aspect of this advance ruling that you were talking of a person having pan-India registration, I think I have read somewhere that whatever ruling comes for me in one jurisdiction will be applicable to all my jurisdictional officers.
If there is a judgment, please give to us.
I will. Right now I am unable to recall, but I will definitely share this with Atul Bhai little later.
Sure. That will help the trade at large actually. It's really
yes, it is there.
Yes. Thank you. So any more things? Much awaited one. Anything anybody wants to?
So last question that I'll have: what is the expected timeline for the Supreme Court to finally pronounce the judgment on this? Department is going to challenge it, no doubt about that.
It is going to challenge.
What we should think 1 year, 2 years.
Tell me one thing. Even if, of course, the department may challenge, but don't you think it will be a bit difficult for the department to come out of the observations of the High Court? Because, as we were saying, department, what it can think against the judgment? एक तो है आप कोई भी value fix करोगे, so they have properly answered. Please go to valuation. How they can come out? See, when I'm thinking of challenging a particular judgment, I also need to say why the observations are wrong or some aspect which has not been considered. One of the aspect can be, as I was saying, मेरा अगर 1/3 से कम है, and whether I can take 1/3. But then again, they have said optional. And they have not actually discussed on this aspect because it was never before them because actual value tha. Only one thing can be there, as we were discussing at the earlier of this case law or this judgment, that if as value, suppose I don't have bifurcation, then whether I can take support, according to me, no, because here the facts were values were available. That may be one of the aspect which department may.
I think the revenue may do similar to Suresh Kumar Bansal. The initial observation was the value has been prescribed under 15. So prescribed is meaning as rules. Since this deeming fiction was there in the notification, similar analogy for Suresh Kumar Bansal was used. Now they put forth this valuation in the rules retrospectively. And there are plugins.
They'll amend it. That's what there are two options. Either department challenges, which according to me they may. And other thing is bring in the law itself, amend it suitably. That may be one of the option. That too, I don't know whether retrospectively it will be difficult. We should not use that word. But that may be the options available. Because
the key takeaway I think this judgment which you just showed is that if the value is more than 1/3, then the department has an option under the valuation section, the provisions.
No, if the department, even if it is more than 1/3, if I have the actual value, they cannot question me. If it is more than 1/3, no, it is more than 1/3, but I can show you there is a separate agreement. ये value है, it is working more than 1/3, but I have a separate value. You can't have question me.
Madam.
Absurd value that you indicated it. That's what the Gujarat High Court
Then
says.
department.
Tax authorities, the department has remedy.
Then they will
try to
see.
check the values.
To be very upfront, अब जो भी value दिखाएंगे ना, department is going to question, unless you are able to show all those things. Otherwise, department see इतना तो जो हम पढ़ते हैं, it is not going to be that clear and you give the High Court judgment and you say it is not going. They are going to question, they are going to ask, and you have to satisfy them. Because what we are arguing or what we are seeing now in this air-conditioned room is a different thing, and when we actually face the department, it is a totally different thing.
Can the circle value be a reasonable, because it is fixed by government for stamp duty purpose, and if that is the deduction you claim, how can department refuse?
But then again, they will ask, what is the statutory support to that? Does notification provide for that?
No. So how do you arrive at the value?
Practically you're right. मैंने जो stamp duty को लिया है,
they cannot say that the value which I have ascribed is not correct. It is not fair value because government themselves have fixed those values.
Agreed, sir. You're right. But does the notice? See, I'm just being a devil's advocate. Suppose I'm in the department.
Fine.
I may ask you a question. Notification is not notification नहीं दे रहे. आप ये stamp duty का जो whether anywhere in the notification it says.
No, it talks of cost. Now you want to ensure that the cost is not more.
That's what I'm saying. But as a layman, as an assessee, whether I can take support of, you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm going one step ahead as a client's advocate. That if you can't tax my land price, you can't tax profit on my land also. So if my total price is 100 rupees,
that is the basic argument.
Price, why are you doing deduction only for cost? So, okay, there is some element of profit even in the land element which got transferred. So if you can't determine, then you work out what is the normal cost of construction, what is the actual cost of land as per the survey, what is the total price, they allocate the price between the two elements and allow me to discharge my tax only on that construction portion. That's
like when you enter into an agreement, take a bifurcated amount.
Yes. That is better option.
Unless you have already proceeded with, if you are at the beginning stage, agreement may bifurcate करके ले लो.
Yes.
And of course, you will be very reasonable. Every person will not quote a huge, कुछ तो reasonable, some reasonings will be there.
Yes.
Do that. It will help us.
As that land is exempt, so the taxable value will depend on minus the cost of the land. So the department is actually giving an incentive to us by treating 1/3 to be deductible from the value, and they are questioning that. So shouldn't the
first of all, department is not giving any incentive to us. Incentive word is wrong. On land itself, it is not taxable. So they should have not even,
If I may, department is actually thinking that they are giving incentive because the definition of service is anything other than goods. So for them, in absence of Schedule 3, even land should be service.
But it can't be, na sir. Schedule 3 में land specifically जब mentioned है sale of land. आप मुझे on what basis आप 1/3 दे दो? Actually, nothing should be there. Land के ऊपर आप tax नहीं कर सकते.
Madam. I think one more point to deliberate and seek your view. When the Schedule 3 entry says it is sale of land. Okay. Now, land is a universe of which freehold and leasehold land are subsets. if we recall the school level mathematics. Now, a sale of leasehold land can happen only through a deed of assignment.
Yes.
So why are they charging and more than 30 years? I think it is said it is transfer of that asset only. Perpetual lease is nothing but a sale of that asset. So it is a kind of perpetual lease. Now so many cases are happening where people sell their land in MIDC, etc., with 60, 70 years of balance period of lease, which is again renewable. So these are perpetual in nature. Why can't this exemption be claimed there? Because legislature never uses a word without an intent.
Legislature never intended, but unfortunately, by bringing this deduction of 1/3, or for that matter, bringing a separate entry of TDR wherein promoter is made liable, I don't know. It is there.
That's another topic for another day now.
Another day, yeah.
So,
We'll have a discussion.
shall we conclude?